Welcome back to Eclectic Soundtrax with Skunk and Vic, and tonight our guests are the Invincible Czars, or some of the Invincible Czars, which rotate about here and there. But we've got Czar Mastermind Josh Robbins with us, and longtime Czar Phil, and then Henry. I don't know when your tenure was, like originally. Like you've been around for quite a while too, right?
Yep. When did
cool.
I join about?
Yeah, Henry joined in 2011, and then left in 2013, and then came back in 2018 as the kind of the composing member. I was filled in between there.
Quite the composer, I must say.
Yeah.
Tell us the entire history of the Invincible Czars right now. Go.
We started out wanting. I hate the word wanting. We started out with a mission to make spooky, weird music, and then we accomplished it.
That is quite a story.
End of podcast.
End of podcast. Simplest usually people just ramble on about a bunch of boring shit no one cares about. I like the way you get right to the point.
Why waste time?
Easy edit.
Invincible Czars, everybody. They set out to make spooky, weird music 18 years ago and accomplished it in one day.
And once we accomplished it, we decided, why not keep going? Let's just get better at it.
So the website looks amazing these days, invincibleczars.com, and there's a Patreon page that is doing pretty well. And that's been going with the whole, since COVID happened and we weren't able to tour the normal East Coast tour that you guys have been doing. East Coast, well, both two tours. You've been doing East Coast tours in the fall and October-ish, and then for Halloween, basically. And then West Coast tours in the spring, usually April, I think. So you've kind of been doing this for what, about 9 years or something?
Yeah, not quite that long. I think we really got into doing the spring, fall thing around 2015. Wasn't it, Phil?
Yeah, it sounds about right. I think we've done 4 to 5 of each of those month-long tours. So yeah, about 5 years. Before that, the tours were shorter and more regional, not as wide-ranging.
But always, the tours have always been on the films, right? And that's just kind of grown into where now you're can book a month out, or if not longer, if you want, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, our earliest tours were going out and playing rock shows just like every other band. And just like every other band, we found that we played to no one. That's not true. We played to lots of really, really, really nicely polished bar furniture.
Oh, nice.
And sound engineers and bartenders. And, when we started doing the silent movies, I think our silent movie touring really began in earnest around 2012 when we did a movie called Martyrs of the Alamo that tells a not very accurate version of the story of the Battle of the Alamo. And we wound up taking that out to Mobile, which is Henry's hometown, and back. And we played cafes and clubs and a couple of theaters, but mostly art spaces and loud, rowdy kinds of places. And
but actually to the film.
Actually playing live with the movie. And then we just kind of built that up because it was so novel. I mean, back then, I think what I used to say is like, band plays show. That's not a headline. But band plays soundtrack that they wrote to a silent movie from the 20s. That was a noteworthy headline enough to get publicity and to get people to come out and see us.
Martyrs at the Alamo, when was that made? I've never actually seen that movie.
1917, so it's over 100 years old now.
Who did the soundtrack for that?
Who knows?
Invincible Czars. That's the correct answer.
Apparently, we did.
So that movie, you guys, recently there was an anniversary that, or for some reason that was shared. There was something about it, and you cited the composer that I can't think of his name, and he passed away recently. What's the guy's name? Encina.
Oh.
Yeah, was there an
Yes.
inspiration with him tied into that movie? It seemed like you mentioned him when you posted that. I don't know, or you borrowed some themes from him for that possibly, or what was the deal with that? Or was it just inspired sound by him?
Yeah, more inspired sound. Henry wrote a lot of that one too back then, and I wrote quite a bit. Phil, I don't remember you writing. What did you write in that one? Phil may not have written much.
If I wrote anything, it would have been just a scene, not a massive music like what you guys did.
Yeah, the bulk of the composition was Henry and me, and then Bill, our late keyboard player. Although he actually usually was on time. It's just that we say late because he's dead. So, well, it was too morbid for you guys. Oh,
Was
man.
he? Well, R.I.P. Bill, first of all. But was
Rip
he?
Bill.
Was he actually a prompt musician, or was he a tardy musician? Because that is a valid question. I'm
No, he
always late. A lot of musicians are, right?
He was prompt, but he was farty. Or wait, you said tardy. Oh,
Marty.
no, he was never tardy. He was on time.
I know a little something about touring with farty musicians.
Next question.
We actually just talked about
Forget
that.
the fucking deodorant and smell like an onion the whole time you're trying to set up and break down at a show.
Well, you should have been on that tour with me. Oh, wait, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. I see now why Phil and Aaron were just like, oh, you, have Skunk next to Josh. You guys set up next.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry that my body odor smells like popcorn.
I feel like I'm just getting smellier as I age. Like,
I think that
I
is
guess that's the thing. You get old and you just get gross and smelly. But like, I used to not. Fortunately, I have I think we had a wonderful. I encourage everyone to listen to the one of our more recent podcasts with John Simpson. Do you guys know John Simpson? Great
Yeah.
guitar player,
Yeah.
aka the Witch. Anyway, he has the best flatulence, beyond flatulence, just horrible bowel movement stories that. Pictures he listened to it like 4 times when editing, and he was just in tears every time. It's
It just came through the speakers, and it just makes you cry. It was fascinating.
Man.
It was great. Yeah.
Bill had a good one.
yeah. Whereas like I don't seem to have like bad farts, but I had anyway. Josh,
Oh, now that's not true. Okay.
my point is I had an incident way worse than you one time when I had a paper route, and for some crazy reason I just hadn't showered, and maybe it had been a few days, and I was so bad I had to I couldn't stand myself driving around. Roll windows. Then I would stop at a convenience store in the middle of the night and try to get deodorant. And my buddy that rolled with me, because I used to take these like insomniac musician friends with me, and we just get stoned and go do this paper out. It
I
was
used
like
to do the same thing. We didn't get stoned, but
dying laughing because it was just so gruesome and horrible. And so you're not alone in your onion smell.
in my stank. Well, I think Henry was about to say something about. What do you remember about the Martyrs of the Alamo, Henry? What?
Oh, it was so much fun to write for that. I mean, like cowboy western battle scenes made for some really great music that we just rocked it all over. I wished I had watched more of those old westerns to have more than just a very stereotypical and I didn't know much about that style of music, but
Tremolo guitar. Is there a lot of tremolo guitar?
Yeah, exactly.
With,
exactly.
Yeah.
Boom, digga, boom, digga, boom, digga, boom.
Yeah.
Galloping type of rhythm.
Letter E is what are some composers like you would think of? Because I think when you think of the Western and spaghetti Western, I don't have a lot of knowledge on that subject, but so what are some composers that you think of? Like that you think very much American composers, right? And my knowledge of that is pretty limited, so I would just go to Copeland or something. But who are some guys that maybe you're influenced by for that style of movie? Maybe American composers.
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, Ennio Morricone. I guess you could kind of call him an American composer. He lived here, and Copeland.
Yeah,
those are kind of the two big ones. I mean, that's what everybody wants to sound like in those soundtracks.
Copeland do a bunch of those films, or did he do many films, or was that a lot more like Einstein and stuff like
I
that.
don't think he really did any films. Phil might know better on that. Doesn't know.
What are some of the composers you draw from just in when you're writing these scores? Like, what are some of your favorites?
Well, we did use Tchaikovsky in that one. We used a little bit of 1812, and that one works just because Americans seem to associate the 1812 overture with 4th of July, with American Independence Day.
Because it's got cannons.
Yeah, it has guns, and Americans love guns, god dang it. And well, who else have we used, Phil?
Bartok.
Bartok music was definitely central to the Nosferatu score. And that was, set in Romania or Central Europe. So that was Romanian folk dances that were collected by Bartok that we used. We had used Tchaikovsky in all the way back to the very first film score that the Invincible Czars did before I was even in the band with Aelita, Queen of Mars. Right, that was a Russian film. And one of the major themes of that was Tchaikovsky's, was it March Slav?
I think we did use a little bit of March Slav in there.
I remember being in the audience for that. That was only performed that one day before we took it on the road. And we were using classical music for each of the first 7 or 8 films that we scored until most recently, I think we used Debussy and Satie.
Yeah. And Jekyll and Hyde used. Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde had Debussy and Eric Satie. Since it's a British story, we used French composers.
Naturally.
They usually go with the guys of the region. When was Bartok around?
1900s.
Classical era? Kind of
Early 20th century.
He was an early ethnomusicologist, so he traveled to the villages with a recorder and recorded villagers singing, people who hadn't had much like outside influence on their music, and definitely went home to his piano, transcribed it, and then made a classical version of it. That's how it got to the masses.
Yeah, that's how most people know those themes.
So for some people, like certainly myself and maybe a lot of people, because I always remember the name The Invincible Czars and seeing it in the Chronicle and hearing, because you guys, I would say one of the, maybe before touring on films, you were kind of known for, you mentioned 1812 Overture, playing that 4th of July and then doing the Nutcracker for Christmas. So you guys started doing those gigs. When did that come about?
That was in 2004 that we started doing that, and that's how Phil came to be in the band. We did a tour, our very first tour, the very first Invincible Czars tour was a mess. I wound up leaving a van in Reno. Adam Cahan, our bass player back in those days, said we drove a van to Reno just to watch it die.
I was about to make that joke. That's good.
Yeah, we left that van in Reno, and anyway, we got back from that tour, and our drummer on that tour was Tom Bowman, and Tom quit, and we started running a Craigslist. Well, I don't even know if we were back then. It wasn't a Craigslist ad; it was just an Austin Chronicle Musicians Wanted ad for drummers. And in the meantime, Bill and I, our keyboardist, had talked for a long time about playing some classical music. And I think I called him one day and said, hey, what if we arranged some of the pieces of the Nutcracker suite for our gigs in December? And he said, oh, that's a good idea. And so then I went and bought the scorebook and I arranged the Chinese dance in one day. And I thought, oh, this will be easy. It was not easy. It just happened that the Chinese dance was really short and easy. And as we got more, Bill and I talked after that, and we said, why don't we do the whole thing? Why don't we do the whole thing and make it a show? And Bill said, oh, we could do a kids show early on, early in the day, and then do a late show later for adults. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And so we started arranging the thing, and it was really hard to do. But anyway, we debuted it December 2004 at the Church of the Friendly Ghost, back when it was actually at a church. And that was the first time that we, I think right off, like the day after we played the show, we had a gig booked for the next holiday season.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, what I thought would be a one-time novelty.
And you continue to do that. You continue to do that for years for exposure only, correct?
Not really.
So you said, Phil, were you on that initial performance then of Nutcracker, or was that after that you came? Yeah.
I was. I remember I had been a fan of the Invincible Czars, and I pretty much attended all of the local shows at the clubs, along with the same 6 other people.
When they were still really wacky, like Mr. Bungle stuff.
Oh, yeah, and actually, they had already started to get offers for club gigs playing original music, opening for some of the wackier touring bands even before I joined. So Invincible Czars were kind of the Red River weirdo band that could open for bands coming from Seattle or San Francisco or something. So yeah, those shows had 16 people there. But when Josh and Bill had done the arranging for this Nutcracker, and they just knew that they wanted one other lead instrument, someone else who could read music, someone with classical background, and I was playing electric violin in Muppletone, a rock band. So we had been on a ton of bills together, Tuesday nights at Flamingo and whatnot. So they knew that I could play, but I hadn't played with them at all, and got into rehearsals at Josh's old place, and little by little just learned it all kind of in the do-it-yourself rocker way. I remember starting some of the tunes at half tempo and working them up 10 BPM per week, doing 2 or 3 rehearsals per week, and it took a lot of rehearsals, but things did really start to come together. It was like exciting being a part of it. I'd always in the couple of years I'd been in town and been in the audience for Invincible Czars shows, I'd wanted to be playing music, playing prog rock, playing weirdo stuff with these guys. And here we're doing weird rearrangements of Nutcracker. It wasn't like you would play in a symphony. I was the only string player, which was great. I love being the only string player and only bowed string player in a thing. And we were, how was it that the connection to get to play on the radio happened, Josh? Because that was kind of the thing that made it a thing that year.
Yeah.
How that happened?
We played on John Ailey's show, Eclecticos, on KUT. Back before there was KUTX, it was just KUT. And back then, his show went from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m.
Wow.
The heady days of Eclecticos.
That was 2004 still?
That was what?
That was 2004?
That was 2004. Yeah, that very first time. But that was not our first time to go on John's show. I think it was our 3rd or 4th. We'd already gone on his show a few times. We were actually, it was probably our 3rd time. We had definitely gone on there one time back when we had Shirley Johnson playing accordion. And I think we went on twice with Shirley. So we'd done it before, and John had us on there, and we played several of the tunes from the suite. And then he just kept playing bits from that live performance throughout the week. And we were really surprised on the night of the show that it sold out. It was the first time we ever had a sold out show. I
remember we had also kind of scrambled to do a little DIY recording of the arrangements as they existed at that point with
at Rick's house. The trumpet
our trumpet player, engineer Rick Redmond had the gear to do it, so we did a recording. And compared to what we know now about recording, it was pretty primitive. The performances also, I remember my own performance being kind of cringy. I'm glad there aren't many of that first version out there in the world.
Me too.
That was like the first rock recording I had done in that kind of a way. So I was like playing out of tune. I couldn't hear myself, and who knew what was going on. But I remember I was delivering copies of our CDRs that we had printed up to Waterloo Records that week that we had played on Eclecticos. And I went in there to bring them more copies of it because they had already like sold out of the first 5 that we consigned to them or something after we had been on Ailey's show that week. And then there was the day of the show. I remember I was bringing more back to Waterloo. And that day I turned my clock radio woke me up with our music playing. And I was like, this is going to be a good day. And I walked into Waterloo with a stack of the CDs to consign to them. And they were playing it in Waterloo.
Wow.
and I thought this might actually be a good show. I was used to playing these not very well attended shows and used to just, doing the dirty rocker thing. And suddenly here we're playing in a venue that was kid friendly. We sold out of all of the CDs that we had made that night.
I
we had never
forgot
sold
about
more than
that.
like the band had never sold more than a handful of CDs at a show, and here we sold like 50 in a day or something like that. I had one student whose mother came up and bought like 5 CDs. I want to give gifts to all my family. Whoa, never imagined that, being in a rock band.
And that was what was the name of that CD, or is that not?
It was the Nutcracker Suite. It might have even said 2014 on the spine of the CD.
No, I don't think it did. I think it just said the Nutcracker Suite, and it had different artwork. It had an army of kind of menacing looking nutcrackers drawn by Tim Gosney. And you can maybe find them out there. I think I've got one, maybe. I listened to it a few years ago for the first time in over 10 years, and I was surprised at how energetic it is. It's not as bad as we remember it.
What's the running time on that ish? Do you remember?
That very first one?
Yeah.
Not long. I don't even know if it's 30
your
minutes.
First Stars recording before, was it Gods of Convenience, or was?
I guess we did record that before, because Gods of Convenience came out in 2005, about 6 months after that. But no, we had made some demos before that didn't have Phil on them, obviously, because he had just joined at that time.
That was your first actual release, right?
Well, we had another release that we sold on our very first tour called Tigris Poxilus. That, we just probably sold 100 of them ever.
Mm-hmm.
There was just a CDR that we made. I remember on that first tour, using scissors and cutting out the covers and putting in and sticking the stickers on the discs, and then we sell a few of them each night.
Yeah, the old CD day. Well, that's what Phil was saying, though. That was one thing awesome about touring with you guys, was going like, holy shit. Merch actually sells. Like people, normally like, hey, I mean, if I ever made $400, I was like, wow, and then I mean, Czars, I was just like, wow, people lining up after the shows, and just you've got shirts, posters, CDs, DVDs, it's I don't know how that tour, the last Caligari tour, compared to a typical tour, but it at least for me, the dirty rock show guy, that's like $50 and I sold a CD. Woohoo! Not these days, but, yeah. So you can play for exposure. But I mean, it was just like, wow, holy shit, so like it seemed pretty good. And I guess that you guys have been refining that model and building on it, but seems like right from the kind of initially when you started doing some of this stuff and found your niche, like there was a market for it that you found, and you were selling some stuff right away. So
the cool thing about Tchaikovsky's music was, it's public domain, so we didn't have to pay any rights to release basically cover songs. That was great. And then we realized that those family audiences that might come to a daylight hours kind of a show have a different kind of disposable income than the rockers that might be going to late night shows, and their kids want shirts in kid sizes. And so that by the time we were doing it a second and third year, we had not just the CDs, but we did have really like whimsical, appealing designs on men's shirts and women's shirts and kids shirts. And I don't know if we ever made posters for the Nutcracker. That's something we got into with movies. Movie people love posters. We realized that. We realized we know artists who can do really awesome design, and that's what you got on your shirt right there, Skunk.
Well, let's talk about the artist that has done, because from what I know, the artwork for Nosferatu, Caligari, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Phantom of the Opera, and what's the other one?
Jekyll and Hyde.
Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, it's very signature, very interesting. Very the dimensions of the posters you make, the artwork is so signature. Who's the artist? When did you hook up with her? And because those posters, they definitely sell, and not in the artwork. It's really great artwork, It
is really good artwork. That artist is Leah Loviz. And how did we link up with Leah? Boy, I don't remember that. She, Oh, this zipper sounded. I don't remember how we linked up with Leah. I think that I knew her artwork. Well, most of the artists that we've ever worked with are people who worked on Richard Linklater's movie A Scanner Darkly. Zach Hall did our.
Or
What's that?
coincidentally, or you love that movie and stalked them and found them? What? How's that?
Kind of coincidentally, but more likely because any artist that was worth a crap worked on that in Austin, on that movie. So Zach Hall did our very first double-headed eagle. And I had known Zach. We were friends from Dallas and had gone, we'd met at like No Means No shows and stuff. And then we played in a band called La Mancha for a long time.
And Zach is now the singer in Magnifico, the Queen tribute band in Austin.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the next artist we worked with was Ken and James. He did all the Nutcracker art that people actually know.
That's on the CD.
The Flying V Nutcracker and the Sugar Plum Fairy, who's maybe had a few too many.
The Sugar Plump Fairy.
Sugar Plump Fairy. And
when did that CD with the current artwork was that like a re-release? Is that the same old recordings or a redone thing?
We re-recorded it in 2006 and released it in 2007. 2006, 2007, then we released it December 2007.
That was recorded in, was it at that time Ohm recording facility?
The old Ohm recording.
Ohm is still around, right? Is that?
There's no facility, but Chico is still around and he still uses the Ohm moniker.
Okay, yeah, because I had heard of that place for a while. I didn't realize it wasn't still a. Yeah, man, I saw some old photos from that place. Chico, is that all Chico's gear?
Yeah, he still has all the gear.
Cool gear, okay.
Although these days he works a lot out of other studios, but he still has all that stuff. So maybe when the pandemic ends, he'll open another location. We'll see what happens. But to answer your question, then we worked with after that, Amalia Litza did our 1812 Overture art. She also worked on Scanner Darkly, and then Leah. I don't think I knew that she had worked on Scanner Darkly, but she did artwork for Trouble Puppet Theater, and she and Amalia Litza are really close friends. And I think that I hope Leah doesn't hear this, but I think I had actually asked Kenan to do the artwork again, but he didn't have time. There's also a great artist here in Austin named David Marquez, who I can't remember what he draws now, but at the time I asked him if he would do the posters, and he said, "Man, I would love to do this, but I just got hired to start drawing Spider-Man." So he was the penciler for the Amazing Spider-Man. I don't know if he's still doing it, but anyway, yeah, Marvel Comics Spider-Man was drawn by David for a while, and so somehow in there, I guess I already liked Leah's art, and so she was just one of the artists I asked, and she said, "Yeah, I'll do it," and she did it, and we thought it was great. So we put it on T-shirts and posters and we went on that tour. That was in 2015, and we had done other silent movie tours, and I think we made 36 shirts and 50 posters, and we sold out of all those in the first or second night. I mean, we had to get more made and shipped to us on that tour, and that was just another 10-day tour. But people kept coming out, and I think it was a combination of the fact that we had just been doing it for a while. But I think Nosferatu was our fourth or fifth. I think our fourth movie that we'd taken on the road out to Mobile and out to Albuquerque and back. But people know Nosferatu. It's considered. A lot of people say that it's the first, vampire movie. If you take a film course, you watch Nosferatu, and so people came out for it and they bought that merchandise, and we were just like, oh, people like this, we should make more. So everyone can have one.
Now it's the same art that exists now, right?
Same art, but after Leah did that one, she wanted to do that poster art with Count Orlok's, and the posters are, I think they're 9 by 26, so they're slim and tall. this is hard on screen to do to make it look tall. They're slim and tall, and so we just when the next movie we did artwork for was Jekyll and Hyde, and I think we said let's just have Leah do it again, and she said, well, let's just keep with this theme of the size and make them all look the same. So we just continued to do that, and then we did Phantom of the Opera, and then of course we did Dr. Caligari, and we had movies that we did before that, but we haven't done any of them in a long time. We haven't played Martyrs of the Alamo, or The Wind, or The Unknown, or Alita, Queen of Mars, or Destiny. None of those. Those were all before we knew Leah. So if we ever bring them back, we'll get her to do some art for them.
She's done the art for those, and also, but those 4 soundtracks now all have all been recorded as well, whereas not all the prior stuff had been. Correct?
Well, Nosferatu hasn't, because we're about to do that scene by scene for our Patreon subscribers in 2021, which is what we just got done doing with Dr. Caligari this year.
This was another you learn as you go kind of thing, because we learned in those first tours that people at the movie shows will buy posters, they will buy T-shirts, they will ask for a DVD, and it's not always easy to have the rights to sell one of those, so we didn't really have those. But then they will ask, well, can I buy your score? Can I buy your soundtrack? And we, for some of the movies, we decided even back then that we would make a CD full length that could sync up. So some of those are recorded, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a CD that you can pop in your CD player or your computer, and you can pop in the DVD in a separate device and hit play on the 2 things at once, and they're probably going to sync up. But with Nosferatu, the movie's too long. You can't fit that amount of music on a regular CD. So, but what we learned, people are going to ask for it. So we did a home studio recording of kind of like a greatest hits. Like if you were to buy a Hollywood soundtrack, you can't sync that up with it. So we
all
did
the highlights from the score.
Yeah, some highlights, and some of it was performed or arranged in a really different way than what we can actually do live or what we have done live recently. So I hope that people who bought those CDs enjoy that. It's only 30 minutes of music, but it includes all of those Bartok Romanian dances that we were talking about with drums, which we didn't perform with drums, but we had much more rockin' versions of it on the CD. And a few of the other tunes that were our original compositions were on that CD. So the CDs that exist for Nosferatu are going to become more obsolete, I suppose, once we undergo this next project where we actually record the soundtrack that can sync up with the movie. And I don't know what we figured out about getting rights for that, but I know that we figured out that nowadays DVDs are even less of a thing. So people want a USB drive or a direct download of a film, and that's easier to do because we can fit 90 minutes of music on one of those.
A couple of things, like with Nosferatu, it's kind of cool because that'll be almost like a collector's item, the original that 30 minutes of music that you guys had, because now it's going to be a whole new thing recorded, and the entire score, and there'll be some tweaks, I'm sure, and all that kind of some different stuff. But also what you just said,
different personnel.
It is like the flash drives and stuff. There's something pretty cool happening with Caligari. You want to talk about that in terms of I don't know if it's a limited edition flash drive type thing that you can get the film and some extras on. What is that all about?
Our minions are working on them right now. Actually, we're getting printed flash drives from a merch company that I bought a flash drive from a friend's band, Brown Hornet. They had really cool novelty pill-shaped USB drives with their print on it. So I asked where they got them and placed an order with that company. So should be getting those real soon. But the limited edition idea was looping in yet another artist that I've known as a friend in Austin for the entire 18 years I've been here. Seth White is a guy who's way into miniatures that you might use if you're doing D&D or Warhammer or role-playing games. And he's gotten into designing and casting original ones. So he's also been sending me photos, even just today, of what these limited edition keychains are. Basically, they're going to be like a keychain that is hand painted, plaster cast, and then the art is actually like a little figurine of the face of Cesare, the sleepwalker from Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, in like a cabinet, so it could sit on your shelf with your CDs or DVDs if you like, and it'll be connected by a keychain to that USB drive that'll have our movie on it. And for the Patreon folks, it'll also have some other limited edition goodies on that data drive.
It looks awesome. It's pretty.
Yeah, actually, the Patreon people are the only ones getting the figure by
Keychain?
Seth. Yeah, that's the deluxe edition, is the one that's got Seth's artwork on it. Yeah. The other drives still have Leah's artwork printed with the art that you're wearing right there, Skunk. And they've got the movie and some bonus stuff on them. But the Patreon only ones are the ones with Seth's figure.
Save one of those for Vic. He deserves it.
All
By the way,
right.
Vic, I really like that shirt, man.
Oh yeah, I thought you
Oh
would.
yeah.
Although I've gained the COVID weight, so it fits a little tight. So like sitting here like a sausage right now. So.
None of these guys listen to Faith No More, of course.
Who?
It's crazy
Who's
because
that?
Josh actually transcribed a fucking Mr. Bungle song. That's insane. A couple.
That's insane.
You transcribed like Carrie Stress on the jaw, which is just insane.
I didn't transcribe it. I just learned it and then put it on that YouTube video. But I did transcribe "Love Is a Fist" because the Czars used to play it. We back when Rick and Adam, Tommy and Bill and I were the only 5 members of the Czars, we would play that. We played it every night on tours up until about 2007 or 2008, and so we had it on sheet music at first. Of course, eventually we memorized it.
I remember I had been playing the Nutcracker show since 2004, and whenever I was available or there was a particularly interesting club gig to play our rock songs, I would kind of invite myself along. But I really full-time joined the band in 2007 when we were playing that song on tour, and we did a 2-week tour in the spring and a 2-week tour in the fall playing rock clubs. And I guess the big thing there that kind of like made me dive in for good was we opened the 6 or 7 gigs out to California with Stratosphere, who was one of those Mr. Bungle related bands. We were kind of playing stuff in the same vein as them, but maybe not quite so virtuosic. And we played "Love Is a Fist." There's a video from our San Francisco show somewhere on YouTube of that.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember we played with them. The way that came about is that they were coming to town, and like Phil said before, I had gotten pretty good about finding the kind of left of the dial bands that we liked. Like, oh, they're coming to town. Where are they playing? Oh, let's ask if we can open for them. And so we got to open for No Means No and Melt Banana and several other acts like that.
Sleepy
Sometimes
Time, Gorilla Museum.
Lots of times with Sleepy Time, we became friends with them and friends with the Stratosphere. When a Stratosphere came to town, we played with them in Austin, and we played with them in Houston. The very first night we played with them was in Houston, and I remember it was at Rudyard's, which is still one of my favorite places.
That's a cool place.
Yeah, and they didn't know us. We hadn't met yet, and we got there, and the sound guy said, "Well, they've already set up and sound checked, so you're gonna have to set up in front of them. And some of you might have to be on the floor." And we were like, "Well, that's fine. We'll just move the monitors down there and play down there on the floor." And I remember that I probably shouldn't say this, but almost every band that I've ever had stay at my house or that we've played with that's from California, I always think, man, these guys think they're better than everybody. They're always kind of like, they always just seem a little stuck up. And so I thought that a Stratosphere would be that way, but they weren't. So we got to the show, and I guess my insecurity about that was kind of coming through. So I didn't really talk to him. I didn't want to bug him. I introduced myself, but then I thought, well, we'll do these 2 shows, and that'll be cool. Maybe we'll, some people that like a Stratosphere will hear us for the first time tonight. And so at that point, we had Tommy Holton in the band, who's from Houston, and we'd been playing. He was our drummer for years. And we've been playing in Houston a lot. We kind of built up a bit of a following there. We could go do a show in Houston and have 50 to 100 people show up, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you're just a band that nobody's ever heard of making weird music. And So, a lot of our own fans and friends were there from Houston, and a lot of them liked a Stratosphere anyway. And I remember that we had specifically left Love is a Fist off of the set list because we thought it would be too obvious, I guess. And I don't remember if it was Jared Hazelmeyer or somebody there in Houston that said, play Love is a Fist. And then somebody who had never seen us said, do you guys know that one? And somebody else yelled, yes, they do. Play it, play it. And people started, play it, play it, play it. And so we played it. And I remember that night that afterwards, I think it was either Timba or Adam Stacy from a Stratosphere that came up and said, I wish you guys were our opening band every night. And so then the next time that they were touring, I asked their booking agent if we could tour with them because they had seemed interested. And so that's how the whole thing happened with us going out to California with them. It almost didn't happen, but they turned out to be really, really cool guys and good pals. And of course, several of them still or have played with the Secret Chiefs 3, and that's how we got to open up for the Secret Chiefs 3 later.
That's so cool. Yeah. Where was that you opened for them?
That was at Red 7, or was it called Red 7 at that point, Phil?
It was one of those in between renovations where they had an indoor stage facing the bar, and a big green room over where Barracuda more recently had that open front area.
Yeah.
And I think at that show we were basically told, like, don't use the green room, that's for them.
Yeah.
That was a really cool show though. They got to play outdoors, and the other band on that bill also was great. Was
Mike Watt? They were excellent
when he was playing with a couple Italians. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah. And then we played after, so we were the after show, but people stuck around. And then Secret Chiefs, all of them except for Trace Bruin, stayed at my house that night, so that was fun. And I remember having a long conversation with Kenny, the drummer, about blast beats, and he was like, blast beats are just like Latin beats. You can have all different kinds. He's got a great video of like 20 different blast beats. And I thought, I just thought they were all just, machine gun fire going off.
Metal's just noise.
Yeah, he gets really into the intricacies of it. But then we played with him in Denton the next night, and we were supposed to play early, but we got a flat tire. So we wound up playing after him to 7 people, which is funny because I saw Brown Hornet do the same thing with who was it? I think it might have been Secret Chiefs 3. Years and years prior, they had gotten a flat tire on the way to Denton, and I was living in Denton. Anyway, it was the first time I saw Brown Hornet. Blah, blah, blah. Edit that out.
Get an opportunity to open for Secret Chiefs 3 and Denton, don't do it.
Yeah. Apparently you'll get a flat tire. Yeah.
Realize they'd been around that long, that band.
Brown Hornet?
Oh, Secret Chiefs 3.
Oh, yeah. They've been around since before. That very end of that very last track on Disco Volante, where they're just like swearing and hitting drums. I think they had originally credited that as Secret Chiefs 3. So there was overlap between Mr. Bungle and Secret Chiefs 3. So they've been around since the 90s. Yeah. No, it wasn't Secret Chiefs 3. It was Melt Banana that I went and saw Melt Banana and Brown Hornet at Rubber Gloves in Denton. And I remember that somebody said, do not miss Brown Hornet. So I got there early, and then somebody said, they're not going to make it. They got a flat tire. But then they showed up, and so I stuck around late. They played late on a weeknight.
So it happened recently at that show that you guys saw them recently, and I, for some reason, playing last and missed them.
Played too early. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
But I just about peed my pants. They were so funny.
Why am I thinking Melt Banana is Japanese or something? Am I off?
No, they are. They toured as Mr. Bungle's opening act on the California tour, so you probably saw them there. Or was Disco Volante.
I was gonna say it's because it's pretty wacky shit. Like it's fitting for Disco Volante, I think.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of their music. Back then in 1995, when I first heard them, I said their music sounds kind of like an ambulance going by.
Like Phantomas suspended animation type music.
Yeah. Short songs, very chaotic.
So this was all. When were those tours? 2007 or later than that?
The tours with the Stratosphere, the tour we did with them was the first time we played with them was in 06, and then we did that tour with them. Oh no, it was
Spring
in
of 07.
That your first West Coast?
End of
tour on the West Coast?
2007. Yeah, 2007,
That was
2008.
that was my like life's goal at that point, was to go on some tour, and the fact that it was opening with the Stratosphere, that's amazing.
I know. I
It
was
was
like,
a pretty
finally
good tour. We got to I saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time and everything.
I was finally going to realize my dream of touring the West Coast this year, and then something happened. But I caught you guys on tour last year, though, when you were touring with Dylan on. That was a Phantom tour, right? Dylan Younger and Aaron.
Yeah, we were touring with Dylan. Yeah, for that second leg of or no, it was with Sarah Jane.
Oh, when I saw you guys, maybe you did the East Coast with her.
Did the East Coast with Sarah
you-
Jane? Oh
you-
yeah, and then we did the West
I
Coast
saw you
with
guys
Dylan.
on the West Coast. We met up with you guys at a Giants game.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
I forced
forgot.
everyone to see.
It was
sports
great.
ball.
It was awesome. Josh fell asleep when we were throwing popcorn in his hoodie, and I've got a video. We got to post that video sometime. And then Phil was super into it. But what was great about it was such a beautiful park, and it was just awesome being at a ball game out in nice weather and stuff. But man, and the Giants just sucked so bad. It's like you kind of wanted to people were booing and laughing at the same time, but it was fun.
There was we were part of history there. Carl Yastrzemski's son had his first grandson had his first major league hit at that game. And
Really?
then proceeded to round first too far and get thrown out.
See, that's
So,
the
it
kind
was a
of game
hit.
it was.
Yeah, but
I remember that. Yeah,
that was the
What?
Giant season that year.
Josh, you were sleeping.
Oh yeah, I was sleeping. Right.
You guys could have played some Benny Hill there. Sounds like.
Oh, we should have if Dylan had just had a saxophone there.
Where did you play? Now, you didn't actually play San Francisco that 2019, I guess is when that was. We were going to play this year, but you played Larkspur. Where did you play in that area?
Yeah, we played Larkspur.
We played Oakland.
A draft house in Oakland, or is just a newer one in San Francisco, right? Alamo?
We usually play the Alamo in San Francisco, but what happened that time was there were two things working against us that time. One was that Star Wars, or was it Star Wars? What the heck was it? It wasn't Star Wars. There was some really big movie that May that came out, and the Alamo was just we sort of not really last minute, but about a month before the tour, they just said we can't host you guys. We don't have enough screens. We've already sold.
Star Wars was out then, I think, by the way.
It was, but not it. But May. Oh, it was the Avengers. That's what it was. Victor's right. It was the Avengers. And so they just weren't going to. They don't have that. That Alamo is really cool. It's an old theater, but they don't have a lot of screens. And so we just didn't do SF that year. We were supposed to do it this year, but it didn't happen.
There was supposed to be some new stuff, right, in Orange County, and some new venues this year too, right?
Yeah, we were finally going to get to play the Frida Cinema down in Anaheim, or not Anaheim? Is it Anaheim?
It's in that area somewhere.
But it's in Santa Ana, and but of course that got canceled. But California's cool. It's expensive as hell, but we have some pretty cool theaters there. We've played Mr. Bungle's hometown of Eureka several times. Always have a good show there. It's a really cool town. People there are cool. I don't know why those guys ever left.
A funny little jewel. It's funny because that place is way North California, right? And near
almost Oregon.
Yeah, almost Oregon, where you have places like Eugene, Oregon and stuff. And it seems like a lot of musicians and cool little things come out of there. There's a cool little pocket in that Pacific Northwest area from San Francisco up to Seattle.
Yeah. And that's an area that we do really well. I mean, Seattle, I don't think we have any better shows. We are not any better received anywhere than Washington as a state, although we are best received in Buffalo, New York for some reason.
That's yeah. What an amazing theater. What's the name of that theater?
The North Park Theater.
Gigantic. What's the capacity that plays?
It's not as much as you'd think. It's only 600 only, And we have yet to sell it out. I think the closest we've gotten is I think we had 400 once.
I remember taking video and stuff there, and like you had told me about it, and then but it was like crazy because it's true. Like you see the photos of the band and just like little ants on the side of the stage. The stage
Yeah.
is so massive, and the screen is so massive. It's awesome.
It's a huge screen. It's about the biggest screen. Although, where's that other really huge screen, Phil? It's an Alamo Draft House. Is it El Paso or Minneapolis?
Kansas City.
KC is big.
Did we didn't play there?
We did.
Wow.
Yeah, you played there with us, Skunk.
That was the Beaver show. No, that was in
North Carolina, Raleigh.
Beaver was North Carolina. We're actually
with Stacy.
I called Beaver, but then later on the tour, I got an otter hat that I thought it was a bear. And then I was like, wait, this is a beaver? And then we found out it was an otter.
And
Stacy
decided it was an otter, and then you became known as Otter.
Way before that, but then I left it in that. The reason I was thinking it because I left it in Kansas City. Remember that? That's
it
mailed me, and what was it? The girl we stayed with?
Amber sent it back.
Cat stole it, and she like found it and had to make. Yeah.
Amber's super cool, and that's one thing that's been really great about doing these tours is like when we started doing the silent movie thing, it was so much different than rock tours, because rock tours were like show up at 10, sound check, start playing at 10:30. At the end of the night, maybe you'll get paid $25 if the owner's not drunk, and also it's going to smell like pee. Oh, Chuck's here.
Oh, hi everybody.
Yeah, and then you can go and you can crash on someone's couch. Yeah, that was one nice thing too about the tour in this capacity was a lot of times you get a reasonable hotel and some pretty nice hotels and stuff.
And food. That's the
food. Lots of food.
And the show's at 7 or 8 instead of 1 a.m.
All good
it's at
stuff.
an hour when people might actually show up.
Movie theaters tend to have a different kind of connections than rock clubs. Rock clubs might know radio stations or something, but movie theaters have connections with hotel chains or Airbnb hosts, and they have connections with restaurants, so they can have a nice comped meal for us.
And sometimes they have food, unlike most rock clubs where it's just like, here are your 2 drink tickets. They're good for Pabst.
That's your pay. We can't pay, but you get drink tickets. Yeah.
Pensacola banned burritos. I always remember those.
Oh yeah, there's that. There's a club. There was a club in LA called the Mint, and they said, "And we feed you." And I was like, "Oh great, well we'll get some food." And then we got there, and it was like, "You get the musician's meal," and it was like a hamburger about the size of my thumbnail here. And I was like, "How much is it if we want to buy another one?" And they said $25. All right.
Oh gosh.
LA, the worst city in America to play, man.
Theater touring or be in a country band if you want to get fed correctly and make money.
Yeah.
I'd imagine theater audiences, just thinking about like stuff that goes on here locally, like back in the day, Spike and Mike's Animation Film Festival, things like that. So once they see you there, I would imagine that, they would tell other people word of mouth, have a lot more people show up.
Yeah, we certainly built up better with the movie theater audience and people who were just into weird movies and weird music that way. I think that somewhere early on, I realized that the, kind of like alcoholic late night bar audience was not into what we did. We were way too heavy, and we're not a great soundtrack for your attempts to, shag somebody that night that you wish you had.
Mary.
Yeah.
Says who?
I play Caligari.
Chuck disagrees. Well, Chuck's here. We continued doing the silent movie thing, and then, we just kind of got to a point where we had been through so many drummers, and we got to the point that the silent movie soundtrack stuff became where it was like, well, let's just do it without drums, or we'll just have minimal drums. And but then eventually, we wanted to rock again. And that's when Chuck Fischer here came into the picture, and he's been our drummer ever since. We had a long period there of not rocking, but lately we've been kind of back in the swing of it.
Well, what's funny is the first time I ever played with you was for a movie.
That's right. It was in 2009.
How ironic.
Very ironic.
Oh wow! So that all the way back in 2009, was that a kind of a stand-in just for a movie gig, or and then you kind of became part of the Czars later?
I stood in for, was it Tommy?
It was Louis.
Louis, right? Yeah, for Louis. And my wife was extremely pregnant, if I
Very
recall.
pregnant.
Yeah.
Like the due date was the day after our show, and I didn't know that until you'd signed on. I was like, oh, we're gonna have a show.
we made it.
It happened.
And I remember she was there. That's right. And I remember the first rehearsal. Bill asked me if I was going to play all those drum fills.
Oh yeah. Chuck really
like,
went for it and played a lot of drum fills and stuff, and I thought it was awesome. But maybe Bill thought it was too much.
What movie was this for?
Destiny. Yeah. And we only did it 2 or 3 times.
And I just did it the one time. It was at what was the Draft House up here
on Lake Creek.
23. Yeah. Now it's like a dollar theater next to Jason's Deli. Everybody.
Oh yeah.
I know that one well.
Well,
there you go.
Used to live up there. It's not the one on Anderson though, right? It's something else.
No. It
was Lake Creek, and now they moved it off
right.
to Lake Line, the bigger, better one.
Right. And then I didn't play again. I kind of operated in circles with Josh here and there. I'd done a lot of things that Josh had been involved in, particularly the Golden Hornet Project things. It was probably the first time I met you, Josh, was when you, I was just talking about this last night, when you did the percussion ensemble concert, Alex Jones's favorite song.
I think it might have been before that. Didn't we do one at Room 710 where we took up almost the entire venue and there was hardly any room for an audience?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And Aaron Lack was on there, and
Sarah Norris.
And Sarah Norris, yeah.
Right. And so I knew Josh, and we had, done things here and there. And then when he told me he was going to do a recording of Czarified Graham Reynolds and Peter Stopchinski stuff, I think y'all were, again, drummerless. So
once again,
and you knew that I knew those tunes, or at least I knew, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so, he brought me in to do that project, and then it kind of stuck.
I remember that we went back on John Haley's show, and we said something like, "Yeah, Chuck's filling in, and we're looking for a drummer. So if there are any drummers out there," and then at the end, Chuck was like, "What about me?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know you'd want to do it."
Anybody but this guy.
Craigslist. Already got a drummer, but is there anyone else? Oh, were you gonna say something? You thought of something.
That reminds me of it.
I was remembering fondly that season that we did Thursday night residency at the Carousel Lounge with you and with Jack playing those Stopchinski songs
and other stuff. Remember, we would do that one tune called Alonzo's Decision, and I would get up on the chair and on the tables and shake my keys, and we'd play it for about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
The Carousel. I hope that place stays open.
Yeah.
Me too.
Kind of a classical, interesting little place.
Nestled in the Mueller neighborhood now.
Yeah. Strange little. It's everything about it is strange, but cool.
Yeah. Seems to remain through all of the changes. Yeah. But in between there, we had. We had Dave Irish drumming, we had Louis Landry drumming, we had Gonzalo Ramos drumming, and a lot of stuff, just a lot of change of people, and Phil has been there a long time, almost as long as me, and now Chuck's been there for a while, and Henry came back. So lately it's been really good to. Or at least it's felt more stable, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Well, Henry came back and wrote, and now is filling in and doing some gigs while Aaron Russell is out in San Francisco playing a month stint with Blind Belinka Brothers. But Henry came in and really did a lot of writing on Caligari. What was the last thing before that you were involved with, Henry?
And I think I did a little bit of writing on.
He
the
did
last few
Phantom.
movies.
Yeah.
But just a lot of writing, not so much performing lately, right?
That's true. I fill in here and there, and I pick up the Czars have been doing a holiday show every year for the past few years with Brent Baldwin's Panoramic Voices that used to be Texas Choral Consort, and so I've been pleased to join them for that annual show, and we've done a couple of other things. I think me and Josh did a duo holiday gig at a couple of venues, including the Blue Genie Art Bazaar, just playing regular straight ahead Christmas tunes just as a duo.
Just
But
two
yeah.
guitars.
Yeah.
Play 5 songs for 2 hours and
Right.
solo like crazy.
But yeah, most of what I've done for the Czars since I've come back, since I've kind of been back in the fold, has been composing. I went back to college. I've been in college for the past 3 years. So yeah, it's been pretty tough for me to, as badly as I would love to be back in that full time, and I'm looking forward to being back on the music scene once I finish all the schooling. Man, it's rough to work a day job and do school and try to squeeze in even enough time just to write some music. But man, these silent movie gigs are so rewarding and so much fun to work on. You were talking about, who do we think of as our inspirations, but the inspiration for a lot of these movies is just the visuals, right? The scene itself. And it's so freeing, as opposed to trying to write a rock tune or any kind of tune that, in the form that we're used to writing in, the different song forms, to watch a movie and to let the emotional content of the scene direct, what notes we're supposed to play there is I've been loving it. It's really rewarding for me. I feel like I've been able to develop a lot as a composer from writing in that vein and in that genre.
Well, so two things, Henry. Like, one, it's just like I remember when meeting you, I think the first time when you were just over there for a composing session, and Josh and I had like another rehearsal for something, and he was like, "Oh, this is Henry," da, da, da. And then I've kind of heard before. I mean, around the time Caligari was happening, before we really played together, I knew you was. I just, oh yeah, Henry. Well, and then thank you. You let me borrow your MIDI guitar. I'm sorry, bassoon for tour, and and super, but you're one of those guys, and Josh, oh yeah, whatever you can play, Henry can play it better. Just plays every
It really is.
hear music, write it up. I mean, that's the thing about being in the Invincible Czars. You're just like, everyone is really good. And you're like, cool, what? But anyway, like, how long, I'm curious, Henry, like, when did you start playing? What was your initial instrument? What are some instruments that are your primary instruments? And like, what was your musical study? Like, how did that begin, and what did you study?
I mean, high school band, but I think one thing that made a huge difference in my ability to gain the skills that I have is that both my parents were music majors, and as much as I wish I hadn't been dragged to church so many times as a kid, the fact that a lot of my childhood memories are driving to church and singing 4-part harmony with me and my parents and my brother, and reading the shape notes in the hymnals at church. So I've been in front of sheet music my whole life.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's fascinating. It's funny how the church theme always is there too, and you hear about that with so many. When we've talked about that on the podcast with some different people, and just the influence of so many great musicians that grew up in the church, right? Well, let's just run down the line. What about you, Phil? Like, what was your actually, back to Henry? What was your first instrument?
Trombone.
Okay, trombone, and then you also play bass, you play guitar, you play keys. Or what would you say are your primary instruments?
I play bass the best. I think I've spent more time playing guitar and more gigs on guitar, because I played guitar in a ska cover band before I even moved to Austin, and played more shows with that band than with anybody else. I've played mostly bass. I play bass the best, and I started on bass after I started on trombone and then guitar. I think I spent the most time on bass. Well, I had the bass hero Jocko, so Jocko was who I actually practiced on,
Wow. Yeah, well,
Can't
that'll
help
do it.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah.
I mean, you were already a proficient reader, particularly in bass clef, I guess, right? When you started, so that I'm sure that helped immensely.
Absolutely.
And when did you start playing? Well, you already said right out the womb. You're like right into church. They're like, here's your part, sing.
Playing shows before the end of high school. Well, when I was still a teenager, I started playing a bunch of blues gigs. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, and so there's a lot of blues going on out there. A bunch of different kinds of blues, which is fun.
By the way, speaking of Mobile, I had a great time there. The beach was lovely. It was a really cool area. And what it wasn't Mobile, it was a Fairview or something. What was that town called?
Yeah, Fair Hope across
Fair Hope.
Mobile Bay from Mobile.
I give your brother a shout out, man. That was the best fucking barbecue I've ever had. What's the name of your
it was so good.
God, dude, it was amazing. What's the name of that place?
Texarkana.
It's just crazy, crazy good barbecue. Anyone ever down in that area has got to go there.
Yeah, agreed.
So we'll hope one of our 3 listeners makes it down. Phil.
Tell him the Czars sent you.
What's your story? When did you start playing as violin, your initial instrument?
Violin was my initial instrument. My parents are really old school. Both of them had been musicians all the way through their growing up and doing marching band in high school and college. And my mom was my piano accompanist and played piano around the house several days a week, the entire time I grew up. And my parents basically had a rule that you start music lessons when you start school, and you don't stop music lessons until you stop school.
Be a rule for schools.
I don't think I actually cared about it for the first 7 or 8 years. I probably cared when I was like being one of the better among my classmates because I'd just been doing it longer and was kind of forced to stick to it. And my parents figured out pretty quickly that I was motivated by money. So I wasn't allowed to have money if I didn't practice every day. So I got good just by putting in the time. And I don't know if that makes me a great teacher now that I just kind of expect you should just do it because it's what you do.
You gotta tip them.
You didn't just do it
Tip
for
your students.
man. Bill, you were ahead of the curve, dude. You weren't just like, I do it for the love. You're like, nah, fucking pay me, man. Get paid.
And I did start getting some string quartet gigs, hand-me-downs from my teacher when I was probably 15 or 16. So then it was like suddenly like actually getting paid to play, not just like my allowance being withheld if I didn't. But it worked. I did a clarinet in 6th grade band, and when I wanted to quit that, my mom said, well, you've been doing 2 instruments for a year. You better pick up something as your second instrument now. So I'm really glad I did piano lessons in middle school. If I hadn't done that, I would have failed out of college music theory, because violin lessons, the most you ever get of music theory and normal violin lessons is, you see that thing you read in the book? That's called an arpeggio. The end. That's applied violin music theory. So piano lessons did me well for 3 years. I can kind of read bass clef still, well enough to play the basic piano parts I play in the Czars. I got a bachelor's degree in music just because it was the next logical thing to do. I kind of figured I would graduate with my BA and work an office job. Actually, I didn't really want to do that. So I was teaching private lessons from the time I was 21 or so. And
yeah, I mean, you've been a professional musician this whole time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I started those string quartet gigs playing classical music for weddings and corporate, brunches and whatnot from the time I was in high school and through college. I was in the Des Moines Symphony as a 18-year-old college freshman. So I got to play a lot of the major symphonic repertoire in the second violin section there. And when I graduated from college, I was like, I don't think I really want to be a classical symphony person. I didn't really want to do that next, get a master's degree like a lot of classical people who don't have specific life goals. I knew that I did want to keep teaching, though. I figured it might at least be something I did on Saturdays if I did end up with a day job. But
also,
I got good at it, and I found out that I loved it. So
rock gigs for drink tickets as well, right?
You know it. Well, that was my thing about moving to Austin, because my last year in college, I had been getting into traveling for attending music festivals, and I'd been raised on the classical, but I spent way more time listening to classic rock radio, listening to jam bands. I got to go on a leg of a Fish tour one summer when I was in college. I went to a lot of shows to travel, and so I came to Austin for South by Southwest in 2002, right before I graduated college. And I just I knew that's the place. I knew I needed to get the hell out of Dodge. I didn't want to be in Iowa anymore. And Austin, I got the impression that I could teach in Austin, and that the people I was working for, the kids' parents, my students' parents, were not going to be too judgmental. Like, you're in the symphony, right? And what church do you play at? Which is weird now, because I do play at a church every week now, because it's a money gig and it keeps me sane playing with people. Through COVID, it's been a blessing. But in Austin, my students' parents are like, "Oh, you're in a rock band? Cool. When can we see you? You're going to go on tour for a month? Okay, right on." And it would have never flown being a teacher in Iowa.
I'm going to come back to that you just said, pertaining particularly to the Invincible Czars, actually, and it ties into Chuck. It's just kind of interesting. But one thing I was thinking, Phil, one awesome thing about touring with the Czars, clearly, like, there's some decent hotels and food and beers, lots of IPAs. Okay,
no.
so our last podcast, we got in this whole thing about from a guy. His one of his bandmates brews beer and works for Live Oaks Brewing Company, and he was just saying, like, oh, the IPA is the big trendy beer right now. I'm like, well, that's what I drink though now, right? And I'm not trying to throw Phil under the bus here. I've had it under control, but I basically started drinking again because of Phil on the Czars tour. Well, the very first gig, I had not had a drop of alcohol in almost 2 years, I think. And it was like, oh yeah, cool, Alamo Draft House. Oh yeah, you get a free tab and this and that. Yeah, but get an IPA. I'm like, I'll have a beer. And then I think I drank every night of the tour, but it was why not? It was fun. Beer. Now, Phil, you know your beers, man. You are a beer.
I'm a collector. I'm not a connoisseur. I know what I like, but I don't really go for the things that everyone loves.
Beers have you had? Don't you keep track? And you're up to like 1,500 beers or something.
Well, shoot, yeah, I've got this Untapped app. I could probably tell you an up to date.
It's an app, right?
I was going to say,
but on tour, what's that, Chuck?
I would say, what's a bigger deal to you, Phil? Beer or hot sauce?
I can't answer that.
I know.
Phil is on top of things. I know that.
According to my Untapped app, I'm at 1,555 unique beers.
This is what it's like touring with.
That's
with
5
Phil.
years
It's
worth,
awesome.
so it's not
Yeah,
like a six pack a night or anything.
Yeah, no, but it's cool. Like, but I was just going to say also that's kind of a fun thing, especially when you're playing at draft houses and places that will have different selections of beer in their region, their local, whatever. But also, like, back to the Des Moines thing, it made me think of when we were there and you played Slipknot, and I've actually. Metal guys would just be appalled to hear me say that I've never really listened to much Slipknot, but I was like, that's pretty fucking cool, actually. And you played Slipknot. You tend to do a thing a lot of times where you'll play something from the region, and so we end up a lot of times during setup and breakdown, we listen to a lot of different music, and a lot of times it is contingent on the town we're in. That's kind of a cool thing that you do, and it just made me think of that because of what you played in Des Moines, your hometown.
I'm glad that's appreciated. I'm nosing my phone all the time, so I'm like, what's the local food here? What's the local drink here? What's the local music here? Yeah, and I grew up, a block away from Drake University, where I attended, was a club which at that point was called Harry Mary's, and it was owned by Corey Taylor from Slipknot. So I saw them playing in a small capacity club when they were coming up, and then I wasn't really a big fan, but they were the thing in Des Moines, and still that's kind of the thing in Des Moines. There's that kind of masked metal thing going on, and lots of aggression. And the other thing in Des Moines is white guys rapping with an acoustic guitar.
Oh wow, that's how did we miss that?
Oh, I didn't want to make you guys listen to that.
Well, it's so that's another thing. Like obviously the music and kind of doing the regional thing there, but then also like you were saying, Phil, the master of apps, and you've always kind of got a plan. When we roll into somewhere, we're gonna go see this site, and then we always eat it all. One cool thing to a touring is I think hopefully like maybe this is a thing, more of an age thing too, where you're not just like Jack in the Box, fuck it, but like you go to like cool diners and signature places like Biggest Bagel Around in Long Beach, or not Long Beach, Long Island, like
Long Island.
amazing diners and places. And that's just, as someone who loves to eat, that's a real joy too. Anyway,
As a vegetarian in the group, I kind of have to find something that I can handle and then try to make sure it's not just forcing vegetarian only on everyone else too.
Skunk's a connoisseur of Hooters restaurants. So if you're on tour and there's a Hooters,
That's the thing about me. Like I can do fine dining and I can just eat like, oh look, it's yesterday's tater tots with stuff on them. Cool. I'm like, whatever. So Chuck, you are I'm assuming you kind of play and have multiple gigs like Phil and you're a music teacher as well. You teach, you're a band director at a school, right?
Yes, and Phil actually teaches violin lessons at the school I teach at, so that's pretty fun.
What school is that?
Hill Country Middle School. It's in Westlake Hills.
So I just found out apparently that you have someone under your wing that is like someone that I've given a few lessons to, and I have your dad, right? You know what I'm talking about?
That is correct.
Yeah, because he was like, do you know Chuck Fischer? I was like, I sure do.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And the dad said your real name, which I've already forgotten.
I
was like, who's that? And he was like, I think he goes by Skunk. I was like, oh yeah, okay, I know who that is. And then I told him how funny it was that I'd actually met you, but hadn't met you until Sunday. Like, we
actually,
Zoom met, but we hadn't actually occupied the same space until Sunday.
And funny enough, we were actually talking, and we were talking about the band directing in the school and stuff. But
right.
It's interesting how that's a small world. And that the dad we're talking about, he is one of the guys in like an adult group class I have that played. They kind of have a band that played at my festival and stuff like that. And then yeah, man. But what I was maybe thinking of this earlier was when I had last year, whenever it was that I was going to tour with the Czars, and I was going, I'm going to putting in my time or whatever, saying like I'm going to be on the road for a month, and they were like, oh, who, what's, and I was like, oh, this band, the Invincible Czars. And he was like, oh my God, the Invincible Czars are awesome. I love that band.
Yeah, that's funny. He like, we just talked the other day and he said how much he loves the Invincible Czars. I said, well, that's really cool. And then everything he mentioned was stuff I didn't play, He's like, every event he talked about was like, yeah, that wasn't me, but that's really cool.
He's just he was really drunk at a gig that had a similar name, and he's just like, yeah, that cover of Freebird you guys do.
Right. In 11/8.
Okay, so speaking of which, so you and I working together, our first experience then has been with LaGrange. The Czars did an extremely interesting arrangement of LaGrange. So let's go to Josh and Henry for that, because I think you guys were the ones that kind of put that together for the most part. Tell us about it.
What I liked about the way that we worked on that is that Josh and I passed it back and forth a few times. I think we were looking at the original, trying to figure out, okay, what do we want to do with this? How do we want to slice it up and ruin it? And I came up with the idea for that initial guitar riff, and then usually the stuff that I write has a lot less energy than the stuff that Josh writes, and so I knew that, and I'm okay with that at this point. We're all so we've learned over the years. I'll just write something kind of low, interesting but low energy, and pass it to Josh, and he kind of revved it up, and then passed it back to me, and I love the way that we compromise on stuff like that.
Yeah, I thought the way that whole thing came about was awesome, because it just kept growing and growing. It's like you guys kind of went back and forth, and there was a lot of initial, like, what do you guys think of this arrangement? What do you think? And then there was sambas and I don't know, like all kinds of different styles and things. And then the arrangement got settled on. The initial parts happened, and then Chuck came into the fold, and everyone kind of did their thing with it. And I just remember two things about the process on that, like tracking it and like the mixing, and like when I first like laid stuff down, I was like, Josh was like, let's see what happens if this keyboard that Skunk decided to make up isn't here, because I don't like it. I was like, where did my keyboard go? And Chuck was just not having it with his obnoxiously loud rim shots, apparently.
They were awful.
It was pretty funny because like the mixed notes going back and forth, I'd be like, that sounds pretty good. I don't want to be like more me, but I'm like, the keyboard sounds kind of low. And then Chuck's just like, less rem, loud as fuck.
And I think it eventually finally, like, I guess it was higher on my priority list than anyone else's priority list.
It was like the last thing.
It eventually got.
Those were like, sounds cool. Chuck's like, this is ridiculous.
It was like, yeah, like throwing snare drums like down a stairwell, and then the song started. Like,
what's cool though is like it's frustrating as I think it can be when you have multiple people, because you know what I mean. Like it's like everyone's kind of like but you like if it was just one person, like something like that might have just that the way it would have been. You know what I mean? The fact that you kind of have different ears listening for different things and catching different things really gives whether it's composing or in the sort of I'm sure Chico loves it, you know, like in the mixing process, just getting multiple feedback. But I think ultimately it makes it a better thing. That was the first time we worked together, but that was totally Zoom. And then like the whole thing was just tracked remote by everybody. And then the last thing we just did now, the next single will be so LaGrange is out, Caligari, the full score with DVD, the flash drives, all these different things are coming out soon. And then the next thing is going to be tell us about what's happening, what's coming in November, Josh.
Well, yeah, we did a version, a bossa nova version of Christmas Time Is Here back in 2011 that I had arranged, and we did it in Portuguese. You know, we got somebody to translate it into Portuguese for us, and it came out okay. It was really popular at live shows, but the recording, there was nothing wrong with the recording. We just didn't really know. I guess I should say I didn't really know how to capture that kind of cool bossa nova vibe. And so if you listen to the 2011 version that's on our Ornaments EP, it just didn't get the right treatment. And so I'd wanted to, the funny thing about it was that Henry created a different arrangement for it about 3 days before we went into the studio. And I remember listening to the arrangement and thinking, oh my gosh, this is so much better. But the time signature changes. We're not going to get this. I don't think we had any more rehearsals. We'd already rehearsed for the session. And so I was like, well.
Did y'all track that live time around?
We did. Yeah. At Ohm Recording with Chico. And, so I never forgot Henry's arrangement of it, which is funny because he did.
Is this the similar or the same one with the 7/4?
This is the one we just did the other day. Yeah, we went and recorded it with Beto Martinez from Grupo Fantasma, and I thought we had a really good session. And and Beto knew what to do with the percussion. John, the percussionist for Brownout and Grupo, came in and did some percussion. Henry played fretless bass. This time I played Skunk, your nylon string guitar, which sounded a lot more authentic. And I think we're just gonna. I think the new version is gonna be a lot more idiomatic. I'm happy about rebooting it. But again, that was another thing that we were talking about LaGrange, and Henry mentioned how we kind of went back and forth with it. It does seem to Henry and I seem to work. We have a pretty similar, we seem to just kind of naturally have this way about us of like, this is how things happen. And there's been no planning about it. It was just kind of like, oh, you did that? Okay, cool. You know, like with LaGrange started out because Phil had been posting,
right. That was inspired from Phil, who is who almost Phil, you're kind of a YouTube celebrity now. Don't you? You got like
I had a COVID
ridiculous
cover project. I would play the guitar solos of classic rock songs that I've liked forever.
So Phil,
that's one that was not one of my first 20 or 30 that I did, but I finally got to it. It was like, I haven't really paid that much attention to this solo. Let me go ahead and transcribe it and fire up my Sibelius software and write it out. And
I think I suggested it.
Play it slowly and match all of the slides and bends and stuff. I didn't try to do the second solo, which is all harmonics, which is so guitaristic, but Yeah,
That was the one that was played right, if I'm not mistaken.
I guess so.
But the best part about this funky 11/8 Lagrange was posting it when it was all said and done and posting the video. And that, you get a lot of people that are just like, oh, this is awesome. Wow, so cool. Fresh tech. And what do we call it? A vocoder, the robot vocals that Henry did. And then we changed the lyric from, I say we, I had nothing to do with it, but instead of got a lot of nice girls, got a lot of nice droids. I thought it was genius. It's so good. It's just so cool. It's so interesting and different and cool. And so there was all these really nice, cool comments about it. But then it would be really funny when you would see a comment or two of just someone going like, wish we would have played it right.
It's bullshit, man.
Back the drums. I wish the rims were louder though.
That's right. If only.
Rims are too quiet.
Yeah.
I'll just create someone just to comment on Troy.
What is that guy? Is that drummer apologizing or playing? I like how divisive it is. It kind of makes me laugh.
It's really funny, man. I love
there appeared to be no middle ground.
Yeah, I think that the thing that we're learning in this era, I think with where everybody can comment is like most people who will watch something are just like, or oh, cool. They don't comment. They don't even click like. They just like, oh, that's cool, and they move on. But the people who take the time to let you know how bad you suck, if you really dig in with them, you come to find out that they're oftentimes they just seem like unhinged, crazy ass weirdos, which you would think would be our audience. But that a lot of times I think sometimes they're just jealous.
Well, who wouldn't be? So I had I've done some videos with my friend Suki, and we just do old cover songs on acoustic, so Ozzy, Guns N' Roses, whatever. And so we had this Ozzy song, and it's pretty good. Like, it's not a bad cover, and it's a different take on it. It's acoustic, and it's got a trumpet solo, and like all the comments. It's one of the few YouTube videos. You put a pretty girl in a YouTube video, it's actually gonna. No one went. My Ugly Mug gets like 100 views. All of a sudden there's a girl in there singing. It's 100,000. But anyway, so you go. I mean, it is good though. Like, it's not like it's good, and like all the comments are like, this is so cool, this is great, awesome, love it, emotional, blah blah. A couple that are like, it didn't do it for me. But then there was this one guy who just shit all over it, and I was like, fuck you, what the? And I couldn't help myself, and I went and looked at his page, and of course he's just like this terrible guitar player who's like playing Kiss solos and like shitting all over Randy Rhoads. And I'm like, of course it's this fucking guy shitting on other people.
That's always who it is. Yeah. That's almost always who those trolls are. They're just, or they're, sometimes I think they're just bots, honestly. And so it's kind of funny to just, what I've liked to do and lately is just responding to them in a way as if they had said something nice, like, oh, we love it too. This is terrible. We love it too. Thanks.
I know one time someone had a comment on something because it was just like, I think, when you release stuff and it says like, what do you sound like? And you're like, well, we don't really sound like this, but some of the influencers or whatever. So I remember like on something we must have released or something, there was something that had to do with typo negative. And someone, it was so random. And like someone had a comment that was just like, how dare you compare yourself to typo negative? You're horrible or something like that. And then my brother just commented, thanks so much.
This is a good Rogering, right?
Yeah. Bill, have you been trolled on at all? Because it seems like your YouTube, like people really dig what you do with all the violin solos.
I learned that they have a whole system like TikTok, basically, that is short videos. If you upload a short video that's portrait orientation rather than landscape, and it's less than 60 seconds, it shows up in a news feed on people's things. The people who live on YouTube, like people who live on TikTok, will end up watching one of your videos, watching two of them, subscribing to you. But I haven't had that many trolls. Luckily, people will be like, "Look, Gandalf got a library," or "That beard, though," and then then the people will comment on that. Yeah, it's horrible. I'm like, all right. I don't reply to any of those. I don't try to interact with YouTube comments one bit because I know they're trolls gonna troll.
It might be the same guy, the guy that has the Love Gun solos.
There's really only like 4 trolls in the whole world, and that's all they do all day is troll on everybody.
Play Kiss cover tunes, right?
They all talk to each other like, oh, you got to check out the Invincible Czars. Their Lagrange cover is outrageous.
They were perfect. They were perfect band, but they suck.
They didn't run it through the mastigator.
They didn't master
Chuck, are drums your original instrument?
No, they are not.
Piano?
Yes.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, and I wonder if this is all true with your experience in teaching, and I've heard this from a lot of people, is like a lot of times piano is required for drum students, right? And back to what Phil was saying, studying piano is just so universal, and I mean, I think it's essential really for almost pretty much any musician. But when did you start and all that?
I started piano lessons when I was 5, and I took until I was 12. Yeah, I think. And at that point, I was transitioning between private school and public school and all kinds of other nonsense. And so I decided I was going to stop playing piano and I was going to focus on playing basketball. And I never grew, so the joke is on me. Yeah. So I the only thing that grew was how long I was sitting on the bench. I went to middle school, and they had at my elementary school. I went to a private school, and they had a like little band, and it was not like I watched it, and like I knew like I wasn't very good, and I didn't want to be part of it. And then so when I was going to my new school, I was like, well, I kind of want to do the band thing. It seems like fun. And so I went in 7th grade. Me and my mom teamed up and told the band director that I had played percussion at my old school, and I had a drum set. I had a pawn shop CB 700 with mismatched heads and a half caved in snare drum, and
that's what you used to range, right?
yeah, exactly. So I played in the middle school band and went through high school, and basically like that first year, I mean, I knew how to read music, and so that already put me ahead of a lot of the guys that had already been playing, and so I moved fairly quickly, and did it in high school and really enjoyed learning how to do like rudimental drumming. If you're in Texas, you're going to be in a marching band, and you're going to learn rudimental drumming, which like is super helpful. And like that's if you don't have a real solid basis in rudiments, and like drummers in Texas, because of marching band, like we all have a pretty good vocabulary of that. And so I went on and studied it at UT. I grew up all the way down the road in San Antonio, so I came all the way from there. And then I played in an alternative band in San Antonio, which we've actually covered one of their songs on the Czars once. It's a band called the Robertsons. We played for a while there, kind of in the like late 80s, early 90s. About what you'd expect. We sound kind of like REM and XTC put together, but we're also from San Antonio, so we were wildly popular. San Antonians, and they love their art rock, and so we they're all about it. Like that doesn't rock hard enough. Well, okay, sorry. Here's a Morrissey cover. You're gonna love this. Here's the Smiths. And so we I went to UT, studied music, and got my degree. I wound up doing the music ed route because I kind of figured I've always had a very logical side to me. So I was like, well, if I'm going to do this and spend all this money, I might as well get a degree that I can get a job with. So I got my music ed degree, and I wasn't entirely sure if I was going to do it, and I just like lucked into a great situation in the school district that I'm in, and great kids, great people to learn from. I had great mentor teachers, and some are still there. I think kind of going back to early middle school, and I started like being a percussionist and like watching other guys like figuring out what to do. And then kind of similar, like going into the situation in my school, a lot of just being observant, like seeing what works and what doesn't, and learning from people who are clearly better than you. So I think that kind of wraps it up there. But like I definitely started out as a piano player, And now I teach all the beginning brass and percussion at my school. And I've actually over the summer have done some brass tracking for people. In fact, I did a trombone track for Chad Nicholson just the other day of the Transgressors. He's like doing a podcast, and he has a theme song, and he won trombone. And I was a bargain trombone hire because I'm a drummer, so I've done some of that. I actually tracked myself as a brass quartet for a friend of mine in LA, and we did a cover of the "This Will Be Our Year" by the band from the '60s.
Bill should know.
Blanking out. They were contemporaries of the Beatles, band of the '60s. Anyway,
Herman's.
The Monkees.
Some other British invasion band, and no, it was not the Monkees.
They were Americans.
Just keep naming bands until we get it.
Let's spend the rest of this podcast doing that.
The zombies. It's the zombies.
That was it. The zombies.
I knew Phil would know it.
You win.
Phil, and he's so techie.
You win a
That's
date.
that
with
Gandalf
Chuck.
beard.
Oh, he's got the nose.
Wizard powers.
Long distance date with Chuck.
When we were talking the other day at Beto's studio, you were talking about. I think we were talking about some musicals and stuff, and you've done some touring or some subs or playing along with, for lack of a better word, musical productions or.
Yeah, I'm actually one of the top call for local hire for Broadway across America. So if you've seen a show at Bass Concert Hall that involves more than one percussionist, because usually they tour with a drummer most of the time, not all the time. I was probably the other percussionist playing, so they'll hire a local hire as well to fill in the other role. And so I started doing. I've been doing musicals since college. I used to be the guy that was the percussionist for Austin Musical Theater. They're no longer around, but it was a great company here in town. I guess in the oddies, I guess, like kind of late 90s and the early oddies, they would do all the shows at the Paramount. They did big revivals. Like the biggest one they did is really crazy. They did the Music Man at what was Palmer Event Center and became the Long Center, and they brought in like the Westlake Marching Band to be the marching band. They had an actual Wells Fargo wagon it was nuts. Like, I don't know how they ever went out of business. They were so conservative with like their spending. And so they, so I made some connections doing that. And then the guy that was the booking agent for that is now, you probably know Mike Mordecai. He's, obviously legendary Austin musician at this point. And he books the musicians for those tours. And so because of my connection with him back then, he brought me in. And I think the first one I did was Shrek the Musical, where I had to learn in about a day how to operate what's called a xylosynth. So it's a MIDI controlled, xylophone, and it has, it runs through main stage. And of course, at that point, I didn't know what any of this was. And so they was like, oh, there's a xylosynth and there's a foot switch, and you hit it every time you see a dot in the music. I was like, okay, when's opening night? Tomorrow? Okay, great. It's going to be awesome. And so that was the first one. And since then, I've done about 5 or 6 more of those. And because again, because of economics, all that is so self-contained now. Like, I remember getting really excited about 2 years ago. This big remount of family opera was coming through. It was going to be a 2-week run in Austin. I was like, man, I'm down for that. It's going to be great. Growing up as a kid in the 80s, like, oh, family opera is that's going to be amazing. And then they wound, I talked to Mike and he said, Chuck, that all the percussion is on 3 synthesizers now. It was like, that's unbelievable. So yeah, a lot of it has become very self-contained, but there's still the rare show. Of course, right now there's nothing, but there's still the rare show that comes through and does local hire for percussion. They will often local hire strings, brass. They kind of pick and choose, I guess, who's like the most important person. Like for Newsies, they tour with the trumpet player is part of the tour, like because that's such a big part of that show. And so they'll kind of pick and choose what's the most important. Obviously, Motown, the musical, like the drum set player is like a big part of the show. So they will tour with that drum set player. So it just kind of depends.
That's interesting to me that, and obviously people who aren't part of these scenes don't understand how seat of the pants a lot of the music behind the scenes is. Like you're saying, the essential players are with the touring company and they've played the show 100 times. If they're on Broadway, they might have played the show 10,000 times. But
they're not even paying attention anymore. Yeah,
like it's very common to do one rehearsal and then you do your 2 or 3 week run of a show. And I'm not on the call list for those big time Broadway touring shows, but I've played at university shows, local, kind of smaller budget stuff.
Yeah,
you might have
it's funny,
3 or
like
4 rehearsals before opening night.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like the bigger stakes it is, kind of like the less rehearsal you get. Like, it's funny. And always, people want to come talk to you after the show. They come down to the pit. Like the first question is, there's always great questions. Like one was like, "Are you guys all professionals?" Like, no. Like,
I'm just friends with one of the guys, and they said, "Hey man, go play drums."
Professionals? Yeah. And then
me up at Home Depot.
they want to know, like, is everybody like on the tour or local? And we have to explain it's kind of 50-50 a little, and the but one of the questions is well, I bet you guys really rehearsed forever for this. Like, we rehearsed for one day and then that was it, and it's like time to go. If you're one of the local hires, now they send the music ahead of time. I would explain to Skunk what they do is that they'll send a DVD. It looks like this, and it's of the conductor and the music's in the background, and you rehearse for 2.5 hours with this and your music on your own, and so you're expected, and that's literally what you see. Like, you get this, and these conductors are so good at it. They do the same gestures every time because they know what situation they're in. They're going to go to the next city, and then the trumpet player who they never met is still going to expect this to look like that. They're going to want to see the same thing, and so the rehearsal is like, when you're at that level, it's supposed to be all done ahead of time, and so you're expected to show up and know your part. And if you don't know your part, then you will not continue playing the show. And thankfully it's never happened to me, but I have seen it happen. I have seen guys, like, the next night they've called in their guy from Chicago or the guy from LA, and whoever was playing that part is no longer there. They get paid for the time that they were there, and then they bring in, grab your things, and tomorrow we're going to have our trumpet player from Los Angeles come. Thank you so much.
Pretty intense situation. I mean, you gotta, I'm assuming that, you obviously, and Phil, I know, like, are just, really good sight readers. Like, you can't possibly do one of those gigs without being pretty proficient at sight reading, right? Because I
got to be good at sight reading. Phil probably, I'm not going to speak for Phil, but I got to be good at sight reading because of my percussion lessons at college. Because I would always, like, at least at first when I was a freshman, I never practiced enough. Now I got over that. And so I was constantly sight reading my lessons, and they would always be like really hard stuff too. It was like these crazy things out of the snare drum book that was like this thick, and so I learned how to sight read really good my freshman year because I was usually not very prepared. Then I learned to stop doing that, but yeah.
I feel like I've been doing the sight reading thing since elementary school. Maybe that's just a part of string players' education,
right?
And the fact that I've spent time in orchestra since 4th grade, and you can't possibly put on an orchestra show, even like a kid level orchestra show, and memorize all the notes. You have to be able to read them, and at some point you have to be able to read them well the first time through. And now the gig life, talking about professional stuff, like musical theater gets more rehearsal than weddings, for instance. If you are playing in a string quartet at a wedding, the way that industry works, at least in Austin, is someone who you may or may not know hires you for the gig, tells you when to show up. Usually they don't even tell you what to wear. It's just a given. You just wear black and not a jacket because it's Austin. And then you show up and someone has a binder and gives you the binder. And you're like, oh, hey, I'm Phil. I'll be playing violin with you today. They're like, hey, I'm Mike. I'm the cello player. and then you play the music for this people's wedding, like the most important day of their lives, having never met the other players, having never rehearsed, not knowing what's on the set list before you go. It's just a given that you have to be good enough at the standards. But then again, these days, those kinds of gigs, you don't play classical music very much anymore. People hire classy instruments to play their favorite Bruno Mars song.
And they come up to you after the wedding. They're like, I just want you to know, you're so good.
Actually, no, they
totally
totally ignore you. You're the servants. We're the servants at the weddings. You're there to be heard and not seen.
I would totally, I would totally mess with people and tell them I got the gig because I got high score on Guitar Hero or Rock Band or something. That's how they pick me.
Yeah, some people. There was a time about 10 years ago, or no, a little more than that, when that was popping. When I think some people lived and died by that. They really thought it equated to music in that sense. You ever had students try to argue? I guess not. I guess there's no violin heroes, so you dodged that bullet. Like Josh and I are just sitting here as the guitar players, like, yep, suck at sight reading. Although Josh, you've been working quite a bit. You're a pretty good reader.
That reminds me of a joke. How do you get guitarists to stop playing?
Put sheet music in front of them.
Definitely true.
It's pretty true.
I've been sight reading so much, I just gave Josh my classical guitar. I was like, I think it's around here somewhere in a closet. Got 5 strings on it.
It strung up real good and sounded really good. Yeah. No, I'm a terrible reader. I know I'm not terrible, but I'm not good.
You're not terrible, and you sell yourself short. Your ability to write charts and your literacy is far above so many people I've worked. I'm being really serious. Like,
because of the nature of the stuff we do in this band too, because we play stuff that's in 13/8 or whatever.
Yeah,
these
can't
weird
be a
time
slide.
signatures, and I've always liked those weird time signatures and stuff too. So I can show up and play syncopated pop melodies on a violin and read that better than some classical folks, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, and I guess that's what's different about my story from everybody else's is that I don't I don't come from a musical family. I come from my childhood growing up was kind of like this is what I aspire to. No thanks. I'm gonna have
go live with all those weirdo hippies in Austin.
Miserable for my whole life. No way. Yeah, exactly. And but I didn't. I started. You didn't ask, but I'll just launch into my own biography here.
You had 2 drink tickets and a dream. Is that
2 drink tickets and a dream and a microphone?
Hey, Josh, tell us about yourself.
Oh, well, I was born a young. Anyway, the
first name Navin.
Yeah. That is what's different from everybody else. That just about everybody that's been in the band is that I started out. I just wanted to, like every other boy my age, I just wanted to be Eddie Van Halen. And I'm not just saying that because of his recent death. I
know it's true. Yeah, you've actually learned Van Halen stuff. I mean, you're actually an accomplished guitar player.
Yeah, and mostly I'm mostly self-taught. I started playing in my first band that I started when I was 14 or 15, and I have not had a period of. Well, that's not true. There was one brief period of time from 2000 to 2001 that I was just playing with David in Stinky Del Negro. I wasn't in anybody, and I was playing with Chico in his band, Object. So that was the only time in my life that I've not had a band that was my band. And I kind of just learned everything as needed, like, wait, oh, how do you do that? I don't know. Well, figure it out. Okay. And sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I still haven't. But, I think I did a pretty good job educating myself. Eventually, I started taking guitar lessons from this great guy named Daryl. I can't think of Daryl's last name right now, but he was in Dallas. This is when I was about 22. And he said, well, have you ever tried to learn Jimi Hendrix? And so then I started learning that, but he liked Zappa and the Butthole Surfers, and I already liked all that stuff. So I really lucked out with him. And then when I moved to Austin, I took classical guitar for about a year, and that's that's when I really actually learned how to read for guitar. Was that 1 year of I was just working and practicing classical guitar. And it was before the Czars had really started. I was playing with David, so I was playing bass mostly. And then I went to ACC, and that's when I started learning about, oh, there are clefs other than treble and bass, and these instruments transpose. What? So that's where I learned everything that I needed to know to move forward. And then I quit doing that because I thought, well, I guess I could continue and spend a whole bunch of money and be broke, or I could not spend a bunch of money and be broke and just start now. And so that's what I did. And when Bill and I did the Nutcracker arrangements, I say Bill and I did it, and I don't mean any disrespect to Bill, but I did the whole thing, and then I finished his. And I bought the scorebook, and I manually put it into Sibelius and selected what instruments I wanted. And I didn't think that much of it. I just thought that, well, this is how you do it. And then later, when we hired horn players like Wayne Myers, and I started meeting more and more people like Chuck and Phil and Henry, and just about everybody else that's been in the Czars ever since. They would say, what's your background? Where did you learn to do this? And I'd say, I bought Sibelius and taught myself to read, kind of, with classical guitar lessons. And
just type in stuff in Sibelius from the heart, man.
Yeah. Well, Sibelius made a big change in the way that I write, because I used to just let what I could play dictate what I played or what I wrote. But with Sibelius, I got into it. I was like, well, what if it did this? What if it did this? And then I started singing it, like, and then I started writing guitar parts that like nobody would play, and as difficult as it is to learn a solo by like Marty Friedman or Uli Roth or even Eddie Van Halen, for the most part, they're playing stuff that is pretty playable on guitar. I mean, it might be hard to play, but it's not like, okay, real fast leaping around playing fourths where your hand has to be like this instead of this. And the more and more of that I did, the more I liked it, and that kind of became the way that I played for a really long time, and the way that I wrote. And eventually, I just got where I was like, well, I don't even need to play the melody, and I've just been kind of playing, getting back into the idea of like playing right on the beat, not ahead, not behind, but I love coming back to the simplicity of things. Often what's so addictive about, I think, songs that we love is that they just use the same chords as all the other songs that we love. And figuring out how to put enough of a new, just enough of a new flavor on top of that people won't go, this tastes terrible.
What amazes me a lot is when the simple pop songs, not all, obviously, there's plenty of simple 4/4, 1/4/5 stuff, but like so many times I'll like hear a song and you'll go, perfect examples are like Ring of Fire, right? Or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And you just easily play through it 4/4, but that song is totally not. It's very, very interesting and tricky, and with the horn line and the threes. But the other night, like speaking of Van Halen, so this had come up because of that. And I was like, oh, let me work out a Van Halen riff. And then Pretty Woman came up and I was like, yeah, that's an easy song. Cool. I'll transcribe that. And then, dude, I was just like, holy shit, this is so fucking cool. Like it's in 6, not 4. And then there's a measure of 6 and then there's a key change. And then there's like things are grouped in like 11 times instead. You know what I mean? Like just weird.
Roy Orbison did a lot of that.
Always. And the Beatles, it's like, it's so poppy that you would never think about it. And then until you go to transcribe it, and you're like, wow, that I think that's really something interesting about that. Like seem to find over and over from transcribing things,
Yeah. Something that I learned from one of my very best friends in the world, John McCain, is that Stevie Wonder, his bridges, it's like total pop, 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 and then this bridge that like might as well be something from out of Frank Zappa, and then right back to the pop song. But he does it with such finesse, so perfectly, you know.
You were gonna say something there, Chuck?
Oh, I was gonna say that makes me think of Burt Bacharach also.
Don't
if you
fucking get me started on that fucking guy.
Yeah.
I just had to learn the fucking Alfie theme song. Jesus Christ.
I know.
What is
And then
that?
if you're just listening to it, you're like, oh, that's such a simple, cute little melody. And then you start trying to learn, you're like, what's happening?
So what got to be the craziest thing I've ever learned? I was like, does anything ever repeat? Like, what is happening? And I had this transcription of it where like every chord is like 10 pages of just like, in this particular version, which I didn't end up doing, that was like a bossa nova and stuff. And it was just like, but like every chord was just like, I had to like stop and go like, yeah. Wow.
Meanwhile, at one point that was pop radio, like
there used to be inversions.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Diminished chords used to show up on the radio.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. Can you imagine a world where you were allowed to do more than 3 chords? Great. I think everything in the 70s was like progressive, right? Kind of in all the old, it was all kind of like getting funky but weird jazzy, like all those like late 70s, early like Love. I used to play the Love Boat theme song at open mics. It was like I was known for that. It was like I love that song.
It's a cool tune.
Yeah.
I like the one that I got. I was working on a carpentry job, and the song that I got yelled at for getting stuck in everyone's heads is the theme song from Welcome Back, Kotter. It's so good. So memorable, and it gets stuck in your head, and it's smooth, but it's good, man.
And not easy to play.
Not easy to play.
That's a good one. I should dive into that. And though you would on casually listening, you would just be like, "Oh, no big deal." Like that happens a lot. It's like, "Oh yeah, I'll knock this out," and then you're like, "Oh shit, okay, there's something going on here. I gotta dissect this a bit." Actually, now I'm really like on this tangent. Like I saw something. It was a couple of documentaries recently. One was a Ken Burns thing. I know he's got jazz and all these different ones. I've seen a few. Like they're all fantastic. And one was on like country music. It was awesome. But there was something else I saw on like, forget who it was now, but they were talking about cartoon music and just the insane. I mean, the animation alone is so. Oh, it was it was an interview with Mel Blanc, and he was talking about just the way they sync the they do the voice and they animate to that. But then they were talking about the music and stuff too, and it's just like that level of composing. That's kind of in the Broadway realm. Like that's just like so next level,
Yeah, that's all Carl Stalling. Oh, what's that?
Speaking of cartoon stuff, the Invincible Czars did a couple of projects in cahoots with Bee versus Moth, and one of the projects that we did was a remake of Pictures in an Exhibition, Mussorgsky Pictures in an Exhibition, and then after doing that, months later, I happened to watch an old episode of the Smurfs. I think somebody had to bring it up on YouTube. Nobody watches the Smurfs, but those old
theme
Smurfs,
song.
Not only the theme song, it was all through it. It was all the incidental music, almost all the incidental music throughout that. In that cartoon was
like verbatim or sort of borrowed.
Verbatim.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Common though. It seemed like with a lot of those old cartoons and stuff.
There's Pictures at an Exhibition in the theme song.
Not the theme song.
Oh, okay, but just throughout.
Yeah, all the incidental music in there.
Yeah, Ren and Stimpy would do that too. They would use the Nutcracker though. They'd have the Sugar Plum Fairy all of a sudden.
Speaking of Bee versus Moth, that was either the first or second show, Good Rogering. Maybe like the show we ever played was with Bee versus Moth, and Aaron Russell was in that band.
Wow.
Right? And who else was in that band?
Well, the band was started by Sarah Norris and Philip Moody, and they're the only people that are still in it. But they've had other people. Ivo Gruner was the trumpet player, and there was another Aaron before Aaron Russell that played guitar. He was really a good guitar player too.
Aaron was guitar.
Thomas Vanderbrook.
Yeah, Thomas Vanderbrook was in the band for a while.
So they're still around, huh?
Not really. Philip and Sarah had a couple of kids, and you know what having kids does to your band? Ends it.
It makes it awesome.
They kind of, you know, that pictures and exhibition that Henry was just talking about has never been totally, well, the music is finished, but we've never released it. So
Sounds like an awesome
one day
idea.
we just need to come up with the visuals for it.
It turned out pretty good. I had a ton of fun working on that.
It was pretty fun.
All the classical stuff that the Czars have done so many different things, but from the early stuff like you were talking about the rock, in the vein of Secret Chiefs and the Stratosphere, to the silent movie scores, a lot of which were, there's a lot of original stuff in there, and then some traces of classical stuff. But my favorite stuff that I've gotten to participate with the Czars has been the classical stuff, the Tchaikovsky, the Nutcracker, and lots of times we'll pull the classical pieces from the movie scores that we originally wrote arranged for the movie scores, and play that stuff live on stage. Man, to me that stuff is so much fun to play, so much fun to work with. Just some excellent material,
In pre-pandemic, we had kind of discussed the possibility of bringing back kind of a more or doing some shows of kind of going back to some of that rock roots, but with some of the classical compositions. And we were kind of talking about some of that, and obviously that's not happening now. But yeah, I mean, that to me, I mean, I think for a musician and then a musician watching, like that's the kind of thing, like if I saw that in an audience, I'd be like, holy shit, this is badass. These guys are doing,
That's exactly what drew me to the Czars. When I first saw them doing that Tchaikovsky stuff, I said, this is not just a rock band stuff. That's real deal classical, note for note.
Yeah, that stuff was pretty meticulously arranged. And I'm glad that you guys thought so, because, for a long time, Phil and I were talking about listening to the old version of the Nutcracker that we did, and it's just kind of like, most of the recordings that the Czars have made that are older than about 6 or 7 years, I hear them and go, I don't know, it's just okay. But lately, kind of ever since 1812, which was about 8 years ago, ever since 1812 Overture, we started really sounding good. And I don't know what it was about that. I didn't notice it at the time, but we did that tour in 2013 where it was Phil, Henry, me, and then Sarah Norris on drums and Aaron Rodgers on keys. So we had 3 guys and 3 ladies. I don't know what the PC term is for the female species these days. Anyway.
Yeah, let's say we had 6 people. We had 6 people.
We had 6 people with 3 people with penises and 3 anyway. And we sounded good on that tour. That I remember it was the very first time that I was like, man, we sound good every night. And I think it just helped that we had
3 penises and 3
yeah, they all fit right into each other. Now I think it was just that for the first time we had a group that like had rehearsed, and nobody was a grumpy old man and had to be dragged along and made to play the shows. I mean, I think every band has probably experienced that, but with all of the turnover we've had over the years, I feel like we've experienced it a million. We don't have 1 or 2 people that have ever been in the band that were that. It's more like 12. And yeah, when Henry left the band initially, I was sad. I was like, oh man, this is the best we've ever sounded. We had other great times where we sounded really good, but that time was really good. But then now I feel like when we did LaGrange, I was like, this is how I always wanted the band to sound. Finally, it only took 18 years.
Inspiring though for people like myself that have been doing it 17 years and got nowhere. So I'm like, one more fucking year, it's all gonna fail.
All you needed was a vocoder.
All we needed was that vocoder, man.
It's all about those instruments that only Henry knows how to play.
I had that keyboard for 3 or 4 years and only just figured out how to use the vocoder for that LaGrange. So much fun.
So cool, man. Yeah, it's weird. Like when I first heard it, I was kind of like, whoa, it caught me, And I initially was like, they're not playing this right. I really want to leave a nasty comment, but then it kind of grew on me. But I remember there were 2 versions, and then it got sent out. And then Josh, I think you were fighting for this, or maybe you liked it, and everyone
I
else
had done that pitch shifter version. I was like,
it kept kind of showing up, and I kept going like, man, I hope this isn't going to be the thing. And I feel like everyone else was like, no, but it sounded like Donald Duck, and it was just like, I think. Yeah, there was an initial version of LaGrange that was just like Donald Duck singing over that. Like, can you imagine the comments on that one? To put it out.
I'm telling you, if we had wanted more comments, that was the vocal track to use, Skunk.
Well, we'd be more famous because, everyone would hate it, but we'd be famous. Horrible band that did that LaGrange cover with Donald Duck.
Well, I think that enough people feel the same way about the vocoder anyway. I don't know if it really mattered.
So upcoming soon, Christmas time is here in November. There's one more tune, and then Nosferatu next year. You're sitting on a catalog of stuff, right? I mean, you've got an album of Iron Maiden reimagined songs of all kinds. The entire Number of the Beast album, which is
we recorded it in 2011. We recorded it 9 years ago and just never released it. The only people that are on it that are in the band Henry's on it in a couple spots, but the only people that are still in the band and not dead are me and Phil.
I'm on a track now.
Oh, that's right.
I'm alive.
You and Katie did that last track, and Chuck will be on that one too. We just need to finish it.
Well, we were talking about, so this year was the 100th anniversary of Caligari. Next year, or is it 2022 that is the 100th anniversary? No, 2022, it will be the 100th anniversary of Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And what is the 100th, or not 100th? Isn't there an anniversary of Number of the Beast coming up, like a 30-year anniversary or some shit?
I think it's in a couple of years that it turns 40 in 2022 or 23.
Yeah.
It turns 40.
God, that came out in 82. Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's got the same anniversary as Nosferatu, so we'll have to figure out how to do that. But yeah, you're right. What's happened a lot is that we've recorded stuff, and I have to, I guess maybe this is TMI, but like lots of times we would record stuff and I'd be real gung ho, and then people would quit, or sometimes it'd just be like I would just decide this sucks. And I just stopped working on it. And that's happened over and over with several things that we probably have, how many hours of material that Phil and Chuck and I played in clubs and the Carousel, where we would do like a 2 or 3 hour gig and just like start jamming on stuff or pulling stuff out that we, kind of had arranged that, sometimes it worked. We should record all of it. That way people in the future who don't give a shit about us can finally not listen to it.
Well, that's the goal. That
is the goal.
Thumbnail-sized hamburgers.
Thumbnail-sized hamburgers at the Mint. We love you, LA.
These guys didn't use a Mastergate. I'm not listening to it.
It was the Mastergation that didn't happen.
Yeah, and take notes, and come leave some good Mastergate comments on some Czars stuff.
Gets Mastergated all over LaGrange.
Well, Invincible Czars, anything to add? I had one last question actually, like crossed my mind, is like, it's something I notice sometimes, like we all have our favorite composers and everything is borrowed and elaborated on. What are some composers that like where you think like not to like throw anyone under the bus because it's impossible, but do you have any like particular guys you listen to modern and you like film scores and composers are like, wow, that he was heavily influenced by so and so? I hear a lot of like sometimes I'll hear like John Williams and I'm like, wow, that's like sounds exactly like this Prokofiev, score.
Oh yeah,
like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But so is your question, are there any of those composers that we can think of who's
the most plagiarizing composer that you like? Kidding. Like
might be John Williams.
Yeah, no, I mean he is kind of like
it's hard not to like him.
I mean, I love you share a love of the Burbs and Jerry Goldsmith. I mean, what a great fucking theme that is. And he also did Gremlins. I mean, so just what are some favorite film composers, some favorite, I guess, modern film composers or anyone in the 20th century, really?
Well, who doesn't like Danny Elfman? I mean, he's done so many, Pee-wee, Beetlejuice. I mean, those are the movies where I first started to notice the music in the movie is really cool.
And he did Batman, but then he
Batman.
did Big Fish. And by the time he did Big Fish, he sounded much less like that oompa 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 that he did for all those other movies, and much more like, what, I don't know. I thought, and I don't want to downplay him, I don't want to diss him, but by the time he did Big Fish, just sounded like a regular old movie composer.
It's amazing though when you have your own. That happened when we were doing I think when we were actually writing. We had started writing on another movie, Josh, and there was something I did, and it was cool to kind of theme. And you were like, it's and sometimes you're like, it's just, damn it, I can't do that. Who did? Everyone's gonna think it's Danny Elfman. I can't play it,
Yeah, it was an oompa thing in Lydian. So
Lydian, there's the Danny Elfman.
Yeah. The other one that. Oh, I was going to say the other one that I think has influenced the Invincible Czars more than probably some people in the band realize is Bernard Herrmann. He did Psycho, North by Northwest, Taxi Driver, rather.
Really? Oh, wow.
What else did he do? He's done so many. I think he did.
He did so many of the Hitchcock films.
Lots of Hitchcock. He did Cape Fear. I think pretty sure that's Bernard Herrmann.
Yeah, okay. Oh, Henry Mancini, I imagine, is another one that you get.
Oh, well, yeah.
A lot of stuff from that. Yeah, Bernard. Wow, I gotta look into. Those some great scores you just cited there.
Well, Angelo Badalamenti. I mean, that's part of why when Fantomas came out with the director's cut, I was just like, oh, these guys just did what I wanted to
I know. It's like one of my all-time.
Basically had all the best ones on there.
Oh, good, man. Yeah, I think Goldsmith did Omen.
Did he do the Omen?
It's funny because I think he the lyrics are like, I was reading about it somewhere where it's like doesn't really quite make sense, right? Because the Latin is transcribed kind of poorly, but it just sounded. I don't know. I don't speak Latin. Oh, badass, yeah.
Yeah.
From South Park, right? I wish they would bring back overtures, like back in the day in the movie before the movie.
Oh yeah, where it starts out with an overture. Yeah, we sometimes get to do that in the silent movies.
It's another cool thing about having that. It kind of gives it a more big production sense. Like when you go see a big main band, and there's before they come on, there's the music, and like with the Czars, like you said, it's one nice thing is you get to set up and sound check early, and then go eat and have some IPAs and whatever. Take a shit, whatever you got, change clothes. I'm looking at you, Phil.
Oh yeah.
Master, I'm sorry.
You'd always disappear 2 minutes before showtime.
I've never seen someone shit so fast in a suit. That's all I'm saying. But
inspired by Tommy Holton.
Oh yeah, Tommy Holton was the best at that. Oh.
Anyway, but yeah, you have like a lot of times you'd have like Psycho or the director's cut and this like just different music, thematic music on that's
Beetlejuice.
That's the tone why people are filtering into the theater and stuff. I was gonna say one thing one composer that crossed my mind that certain directors, they always kind of have their go-to guys, and Robert Zemeckis uses Alan Silvestri a lot, right?
Oh, Silvestri is great.
Yeah, and real simple, right? And real themey stuff, and the piano themes, and I think obviously Castaway and Forrest Gump, but the super famous Silvestri soundtrack is obviously Back to the Future, right?
Yeah.
But speaking of Lydian, and Predator too, which is fucking badass, man. He did Predator.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant Predator 2.
Has anyone actually watched that movie? Predator 2 is okay, I guess. But yeah, Predator 1. That's such a cool fucking score. By the way, you know who covered that? I forgot about it. They were always known for doing Transformers, but I remember seeing Muchos Backflips covered the Predator theme song, and I was like, fucking yeah. Listen, always pulls cool stuff like that out too. Anyway, there was a funny story about, I think it was one of the someone was saying like he had done, and I love the movie Romancing the Stone. I don't know if you guys know that movie.
Oh, yeah, I remember
the soundtrack is fitting for that movie. It's got the saxophone 80s, the whole fucking thing, And so I guess Silvestri did that. And so I guess it was like right after that with Back to the Future was happening, and someone was talking, maybe it was Spielberg was asking about the music, and Zemeckis was like, oh, I want to use this, I'm the Silvestri guy or whatever. And And he was like, and he had heard the romantic, and he was like, yeah, I don't know, man. And don't quote me on any of this. I just remember hearing this somewhere. Who knows? But it's a funny story. And so then he was like, I just don't think it's a good idea. And so then he played. I guess he had some of the score that something he had done. He was like, so we'll check this out. And then it was what he wrote. And Spielberg or whoever the fuck it was just like, yeah, like that. That's it, like that. And he's like, oh, that's him. So obviously he stepped up his game a bit.
Well, I think he's just. I think something about Silvestri is that he's done so much that I think that he can pull out a style that I would imagine if anyone in that realm could pull out a style that's unexpected, it would be him. Because I mean, who's done? I mean, other than Goldsmith. I mean, what's that other guy's name? That he's German. Why can't I think of his name? He does the Master Class.
Hans Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer. Yeah, I mean, Zimmer and Silvestri seem to be, and of course Williams seem to be the guys in Hollywood. And
like you talk about unexpected style too. I remember learning and being surprised that. Sorry, I'm obviously very tired. Who were talking about? Star Wars guy.
Oh, John
Williams.
Thank you, John Williams. That he did Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah.
And that is like such a hip, like 50s sounding, thinly scored movie, like after something like Star Wars, it's like,
yeah.
I remember being really surprised to learn that he wrote the music and did the music for that. Is basically like a soprano sax and some vibes and brushes on snare. Like, wow, it was like,
he was a jazz guy back then, right?
Jazz pianist,
yeah.
I believe, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
His dad was Johnny Williams, who was the drummer for Raymond Scott's band. Do you guys know Raymond Scott? He wrote.
Oh, that's called Powerhouse or something, right?
Yeah, it's called Powerhouse. He wrote a bunch of compositions in the 20s and 30s that later Warner Brothers bought, and then Carl Stalling incorporated them into the cartoon. So you've heard Raymond Scott's music for sure. And Johnny Williams was the drummer, and John Williams is his son.
Okay, well, that checks out.
Yeah, he definitely came from that jazzy kind of realm. I think Victor's right.
Well, another one of my favorite composers is what's the name? Nino Rota, who did The Godfather.
Oh yeah,
Rota's good too. Yeah.
What has he done? What's some other notable scores, Henry?
I'm not sure, but I came across one piece that he wrote called Carlotta's Gallop.
Yeah, that's really good.
And I thought to myself, oh, that sounds like Danny Elfman. I wonder if Danny Elfman took a lot of.
Yeah, I think so.
I love that when you actually hear things and you're like, I would love to do that if I were to meet one of those composers to be like, hey, who are were you by any chance, you know what I mean? Or maybe it's subconscious, but sometimes I was mentioning this one to you. I love this score. I love Prokofiev, and it's Alexander Nevsky. Do you guys know that score?
No.
It was this old Russian propaganda movie in the 30s or something when the shit was about to hit the fan with the Nazis. And it's this old black and white fucking old school war movie. And Prokofiev did the soundtrack, and it's badass. Really got some cool metal sort of moments, but also a lot of cool sparseness and vocal choir type melodies. But there's, I think, the intro to that. If in my mind, the intro to that and then the intro music to Raiders of the Lost Ark is holy fucking shit. It is very,
really
very
similar.
Very similar. Yeah. And then there's was it Dvorak or someone had the little flat two thing, and that's obviously Jaws. You know what I mean? There's some things that somebody goes boom, 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 and for eternity on, it's well, now everyone's gonna be,
Yeah.
Someone the other day was like, "Oh man, well this sounds like." Actually, I was doing some tracks and it was like, "Does that sound too much like this Van Morrison tune of this?" And I'm like, "It's the same style." And everyone and their grandma has fucking used this exact shit. So I'm not worried about.
What the hell?
Yeah, it's I'm just doing what's already been done a million times. Like that. That. Yeah, except for the vocoder 11.8 Lagrange. That's pretty new. Worthy of being trolled upon because of it.
Newish. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, we could keep going, but we probably lost everybody. Hi. Hi, we're here with the Invincible Czars. I'm going to listen to your podcast.
You asked me at the very beginning to explain our history, and I did it in one sentence, and I think you could just edit it down to that.
I think that's what we need to do. Like Phil said, and then people would be like, oh, this podcast is 1 second. Maybe I'll listen. Look at it and they go, 2 hours and 30 minutes for these fucking guys?
I can
Not
squeeze
famous.
1 second into my schedule, though.
None of them are Cardi B or Kanye West. This is stupid.
3 chords and the truth, baby.
3 chords on the truth and 11/8. Anything to add, anybody?
Hey, who are you calling not Cardi B?
What's that?
I said, who are you calling not Cardi B?
What, you got a WAP going right now, or what? Are you one of the non-penises in the band?
Got a dry ass penis.
Oh man, it's very dry. We tried to moisten it once, and
The things you learn on waking up to guys trying to moisten your penis.
Man, I'm glad
I'd
nobody
be
wants
fucking
to-
out of here if it wasn't for those free IPAs.
Your wiener is like a chicharroni. We've been pouring Dr. Pepper on it all night, and it's still dry.
That should just be the end of the podcast. Like there's no outro. There's no thanks for that. It just ends. With that bizarre Dr. Pepper on a penis comment.
Just edit out to where it's just the explanation and then right at the end.
Tell us about the history of this bizarre Dr. Pepper on Henry's dry penis.
Chicharroni penis skin.
We'll just chop things up. And I started playing penis when I was 14. Penises.
He said piano. Oh no, change it to penis. I was a penis.
Started out
I
playing
like-
the penis.
These guys are really mature.
This has been the most mature podcast we've had. We actually talked about music. Usually it's just me like this and talking about buttholes and stuff. But I mean, Josh knows. We've been on tour together. Then there's the face that he always makes. Poor Josh.
No more master gaping.
No more master gape. All right, we've master gaped enough. Look, I said it. Freudian slip. I said master gate. Nixon get in trouble for masturbating.
Not deep proud.
It's horrible. Let's abort. Let's get out of this. Victor, sign us.
All right.
Invincible Czars, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Josh Robbins, Phil Davidson, Phil the Violin Guy on YouTube, Invincible Czars on YouTube, and website and Patreon, a million. Henry Q Vines, Chuck Fisher, myself, Skunk Manhattan.
Skunk Manhattan.
In the Faith No shirt, we don't see the more, just Faith No.
Oh.
Faith No More.
There we go.
Victor.
This has been the Invincible Czars. Listen, share, go buy stuff. See us when we ever tour again. And troll. Be sure to troll.
Please troll.
That's
we
right.
Love that.
I love trolls.
Perfect trolling. We need perfect trolling.
And remember to vote for the Invincible Czars for president. Thank you guys for coming on the show. It was fun.
99.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Adios.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Later, skaters.